He was the true prince of an emperor, the only one at that. The emperor's bloodline, after successfully merging with the Tao, was incredibly potent, making it almost impossible for him to have more offspring. This sole heir was doted upon extravagantly. The emperor even allocated a third of the world's territories to be managed by Mo Long, indulging his imperial desires. In terms of innate talent, God Emperor Mo Long was rather ordinary. It was only due to his father's formidable bloodline that he comprehended the immensely powerful great Tao of the Source. Additionally, he possessed numerous mystical treasures, which granted him peak strength. However, these were all external factors. Every Grand Yen Immortal sought the same ultimate goal: merging with the Tao. Only by successfully merging could one become an emperor and truly transcend the universe, becoming a supreme being. This was the Tao pursued by Luo Hao. At this moment, he couldn't afford to fail. Even if it meant death, he was determined to perish in the process of merging with the Tao. "Excuse me, may we talk?" Luo Hao transmitted his voice. Although Hu Qing's power was not as strong as his, he still possessed the strength of an ordinary top-tier Grand Yen Immortal. Along with Jian Wushuang and the others burning their innate Yen power, there was hope to contend against God Emperor Mo Long. If they persisted for a few more hours, the first prince of their Daluo realm would arrive. At that time, despair would befall God Emperor Mo Long. Hu Qing hesitated for a moment and then cautiously inquired, "What do you want to discuss?" "Cooperation." On the surface, they clashed fiercely, but in the shadows, they plotted against the external God Emperor Mo Long. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in a mountain cave, oblivious to the conflicts of the outside world. Channeling his yen power from the source, he continuously repaired his damaged divine body. From an external perspective, the speed of his Bodhis restoration was visible to the naked eye, a pace unheard of in the entire universe. Just a bit more. I wonder if Hu Qing can hold on. Jian Wushuang felt a sense of urgency. His gaze flickered over the floating identity token. Trial participant, Jian Wushuang achievements, 400,000 ranking, 4,768 trial time, 3 years trial duration. 30 years, there were still over 20 years left. Although he wasn't in a hurry, opportunities like today were rare. If he could defeat the top 100 participants, both he and Hu Qing could enter the top 1,000 rankings, a position they could maintain until the end of the trial. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one he couldn't afford to let slip away. He glanced at the rankings of God Emperor Mo Long and Luo Hao, one in the 500s, the other in the 900s. According to Luo Hao, these powerful beings were mostly not near the mountain ranges. They mostly fought on the main continents. Even though 30% of the original planet's Grand Yen Immortals had fallen, leaving roughly 1 million, realistically speaking, only tens of thousands dared to battle. The rest of the Grand Yen Immortals who knew they had no chance mostly hid within various mountain ranges. 70% of the original planet's territory consisted of mountains, 20% were deep pits left by lakes, and the remaining 10% constituted the continents. In this realm, which was exceedingly small for Grand Yen Immortal, one could easily encounter numerous perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals with just a casual stroll. Various factions banded together, sweeping the 4 corners and hunting down solitary wanderers. In such a perilous environment, breaking into the top 1,000 required numerous battles. His strength could at most match that of top-grade Grand Yen Immortals, with perhaps a slight advantage in speed. On this continent, his speed would no longer be an advantage because there were far too many formidable individuals. Surrounded and pursued, he couldn't effectively utilize his speed advantage. Now, the only opportunity lay right before his eyes, and he had to seize it firmly. Phew! Exhaling sharply, Jian Wushuang slowly got up. Faster recovery than the last time. His narrow escape this time had further strengthened his source, and his thought power had grown significantly stronger than before. A deep hum echoed through the air as a pitch-black, elongated spear burst out from the cave. With an unstoppable momentum, it pierced through the entire mountain peak and headed straight for the God Emperor Mo Long, who stood proudly in the sky. Neo Long turned slightly, catching the spear that streaked past him in front of his eyes. He isn't injured at all. Could that aura have been a disguise? God Emperor Mo Long was somewhat surprised. He knew that Hu Qing had intercepted Luo Hao below. Ever since Luo Hao had gone down, he hadn't felt that sense of impending danger. This had puzzled him. Now, Jian Wushuang had suddenly emerged again, and it seemed like he hadn't been harmed at all. Perhaps I've been too cautious, murmured God Emperor Mo Long to himself, his figure suddenly descending deep into the ravine. On the other side, Jian Wushuang emerged from the cave. Mo Long, your fate is sealed today. Jian Wushuang's eyes glinted with cold determination. After much planning, the two of them had finally walked into their trap. Hu Qing, activate the Grand Formation. Hu Qing, who had been fighting with Luo Hao, revealed a slight smile. He directly addressed Luo Hao. I take my leave for now. What? Luo Hao was stunned. What did this mean? Weren't they just having a peaceful conversation moments ago? How could this seemingly honest monk just flee like this? Before he could react, the entire canyon was filled with flying sand and rolling stones, the world spinning around him. The Grand Formation shifted, relocating Luo Hao from an open space to a hillside. The sky that was once above his head now appeared beneath his feet, and the mighty divine mountain stood above him. A tremendous pressure engulfed him instantly. Ha! God Emperor Mo Long's face also paled. How can there be such a grand formation here? He had been keeping an eye on Luo Hao and the monk. They couldn't possibly have set up the formation in such a short time, could they? Whoosh! In an instant, Mo Long was also transported to another location. Luo Hao. Mo Long's face darkened. Mo Long. Luo Hao's expression was equally grim. They exchanged a glance and instantly understood. They had been tricked by Jian Wushuang. The threat they felt was escalating, sinking Mo Long's heart. Whoosh! Whoosh! Jian Wushuang wielded an ordinary long sword that appeared before them instantly, accompanied by Hu Qing. Brother Luo Hao, we've come to assist you, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. Hu Qing nodded in agreement. Upon hearing this, God Emperor Mo Long hurriedly retreated, putting some distance between himself and Luo Hao. The Grand Formation had weakened his power by 30%. At this moment, he was just an ordinary peak Grand Yen Immortal. Once Luo Hao activated his source, he would be on par with Mo Long. Although he had some treasures and tricks up his sleeve, facing a 1-on-3 situation, he dared not be careless. God Emperor Mo Long. Luo Hao opened his mouth, glancing at Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Eventually, he took a deep breath and shouted, "Your time has come." Although it was just a breath, he had already calculated countless times in his mind. Instead of being a dog to Mo Long and risking being killed in the end, he decided it was better to cooperate with Jian Wushuang. Together, they could confront Mo Long. In his view, Jian Wushuang and the others were relatively strong. Even with the Grand Formation, the three of them could at most contend with Mo Long. If they could delay a little longer, the first prince of the Daluo realm would arrive. By then, the initiative would be in his hands. Moreover, this was also an opportunity to weaken Mo Long's strength. When the other princes from his clan arrived, he could reap the benefits without doing much, making it the best course of action. Brother Wushuang. Today we join forces to slay God Emperor Mo Long and share his achievements, Luo Hao said earnestly. Mo Long, standing at a distance, was furious. He had been careless this time, falling into the hands of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, don't blame me for not warning you. Several princes from the Daluo realm are rushing this way. If you cooperate with Luo Hao to deal with me, you'll only be playing into their hands, Mo Long said, though he was confident he could avoid this battle. If this formation could truly harm him, dealing with the other princes from the Daluo realm afterwards would be troublesome. Jian Wushuang shook his head, displaying a disbelieving expression. Coldly, he said, "Stop the nonsense. Let's fight." Hu Qing, activate the formation. Release the constraints on Luo Hao. He's valuable. Jian Wushuang transmitted his message to Hu Qing. Attack. Luo Hao felt his body lighten as the constraints lifted. He was overjoyed. Without hesitation, he charged at God Emperor Mo Long. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing followed suit. The three of them besieged Mo Long. In this formation, Luo Hao's strength not only didn't diminish, but it even increased due to the formation's power. Gradually, his power became comparable to that of a peak Grand Yen Immortal. He alone could keep God Emperor Mo Long occupied. The crescent moon-shaped blades sliced across God Emperor Mo Long's chest once more. Before he could react, Hu Qing struck from behind, sending Mo Long crashing into the mountainside. Jian Wushuang comprehended the ultimate sword Dao. His essence was always about killing. His figure flickered, his eyes glinting with bloodlust. He consecutively struck out several times. Although this long sword was just an ordinary treasure, with the blessing of the ultimate Dao, its power still posed a threat to God Emperor Mo Long Puff. Under the onslaught of the three, God Emperor Mo Long found himself faltering. He hadn't anticipated that this grand formation not only suppressed his powers, but also allowed the controller to enhance the abilities of Jian Wushuang and the others. This intricate grand formation couldn't be set up in just a few years. Moreover, it was beyond the grasp of ordinary people. In his divine realm, there was a formation that his father had paid a hefty sum for, one set up by a formation emperor. He had investigated it back then. Emperor-grade formations were generally not passed down, only available for purchase. If an emperor crafted a formation, unless it reached a world grade, it could be easily retracted. Such formations were immensely valuable and served great purposes for emperors. Consequently, they came at exorbitant prices. Emperors with weaker power, unable to recruit a formation grandmaster, would buy a mobile formation, placing it in their own Dao arena to suppress yen power. If the formation in the canyon was mobile, its setup would have been much simpler. Mo Long's body twitched, his brows furrowing. He turned his gaze to Hu Qing, secretly thinking, "It must be the monk who set up this formation. As long as they killed the controller of the formation, it would naturally collapse." A flash of killing intent flickered in his eyes as he immediately launched a counterattack. Sensing Mo Long's intentions, Jian Wushuang hurriedly transmitted, "Hu Qing, retreat quickly." A massive octagonal diagram appeared. Mo Long, previously suppressed, caught his breath. His strength instantly surged as he attacked Hu Qing. Seeing this, Luo Hao naturally understood the situation. The formation had been set up by Hu Qing. If Mo Long succeeded now, all their previous efforts would be in vain. "Let's go all out. Once we kill him, and all the treasures will be mine," he thought. With determination, he once again ignited the power of his source. His blade swiftly spun, and despite not being adept at close combat, Luo Hao directly stood in front of Hu Qing, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with Mo Long. Boom. Looking for death, God Emperor Mo Long could no longer feign arrogance. His heart brimmed with intense killing intent. He had initially thought of keeping Luo Hao as bait, but now it seemed unnecessary. Ding! The treasure on his forehead shimmered. Mo Long's entire divine body expanded explosively. At that moment, his aura soared, causing the boundless grand array to tremble. The seal was broken. An ancient aura erupted from within God Emperor Mo Long. The power surged, surpassing the peak of Grand Yen Immortal, heading straight for top tier. Luo Hao, who had been confident, felt a bit dazed. It was too late to retreat. All he could do was shout, "Brother Wushuang, come quickly to my aid." Jian Wushuang stood at a distance, silently observing everything. God Emperor Mo Long has unleashed his trump card. There's no need to spare Luo Hao anymore. Hu Qing's clear and wise eyes showed no mercy, just a slight nod. One might have thought Hu Qing would feel uneasy, but now he was resolute, decisively abandoning the situation. It was different from when they first met. Jian Wushuang secretly decided that after this incident, he would separate from Hu Qing. The secrets this person carried were undoubtedly significant, and both were walking the path of the strong. Sooner or later, they would end up on opposite sides. It was better to part ways sooner rather than later. Qishan Temple, the highest trial, original planet. Jian Wushuang had a feeling that the appearance of Qishan Temple was not merely a coincidence in the original universe's manipulation. The original planet was just the first step. There would be more trials to come. He wondered when he could leave Qishan Temple. There had to be some connection behind all this, perhaps known to those emperors. Maybe even the emperors didn't know. The connection with the Qishan Temple was too significant. Hu Qing had also stepped into the Deu after the emergence of the Qishan Temple, displaying overwhelming power. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but suspect that this person might be a reincarnation of some mighty being. Sighing, Jian Wushuang considered. Ever since leaving the Great Sea region, the entire original universe had become chaotic, from the road of immortal bones to the army of corpses, and then suddenly grasping heart power and comprehending the extreme Tao, his consciousness entering the starry sky, and finally, the opening of Qishan Temple. Could these events be related? If only that old guy Xianxia were here. This cosmic secret script, that old guy understood it best. Unfortunately, it had been years since Jian Wushuang had seen Xianxia since their last parting. From his current perspective, Xianxi's strength remained a mystery. He could traverse the universe, roam freely, and was unafraid of the existence of Jin Wuyang. At the very least, Xianxia must be a fifth-tier emperor, right? Such a powerful old guy wouldn't be thinking about him, a little guy, all the time. Jian Wushuang wondered if Xianxia would show up this time when Qishan Temple made its move. But these thoughts quickly vanished from his mind. What mattered now was figuring out how to take down these two individuals. Pondering these things was not the priority at the moment. God Emperor Mo Long's sudden eruption caught Luo Hao off guard. In just a few moves, Luo Hao's divine body began to crack. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing showed no intention of stepping in to help, leaving Luo Hao in despair. Weren't these two afraid that he would die? Would Mo Long go after them next? God Emperor Mo Long, I'll cooperate with you. Spare my life. Luo Hao couldn't bear it anymore. He could feel the killing intent emanating from God Emperor Mo Long. Fear gripped him. The journey of cultivation had not been easy. He didn't want to fall like this. The God Emperor Mo Long, who had already opened all the ancient and mysterious treasures, was resolute in his murderous intent. He knew that the only way to ease the hatred in his heart was to see blood spilled. Ha! Stop struggling. Just perish already. Mo Long, with a mighty hand, shattered Luo Hao's skull, nearly tearing apart his divine body. Luo Hao's origin source within him began to dissipate. Unwillingly, he roared, Mo Long, spare my life, and I will give you my identity token. All my achievements, everything, they're all yours. Boom! All Luo Hao received in response was a relentless barrage of heavy punches, showing no intention of stopping. Puff! Blood spurted out of his mouth. Yet, Luo Hao persisted, pleading, God Emperor Mo Long, spare me, and one will join forces with you to kill the crown princes of my clan. They have millions of achievements, and I know their weaknesses. Mo Long, his eyes devoid of mercy, continued to rain blows upon Luo Hao's head. Let me tell you the truth. The reason I kept you alive this long was to lure those princes from your Daluo realm. Mo Long grabbed Luo Hao by the neck. His other hand clenched into a fist and slammed ruthlessly into Luo Hao's face. You were just bait. Nothing more, you fool. Luo Hao was utterly desperate. He knew he was going to die today. He began to curse Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, his entire being consumed by madness. The second-grade origin source was vast, an immensely broad great Tao. Now on the verge of collapse, Luo Hao directly burned the last remnants of his origin source, pushing his strength to its peak. In that moment, he managed to escape the clutches of the God Emperor Mo Long. Ha! I never expected that Luo Hao would meet my end here today. He was a top-tier Grand Yen Immortal with numerous allies on this primitive planet. Despite the opportunity to fight on the main continent, he chose to hide in these mountains, specifically hunting down weaker Grand Yen Immortals. Clearly, he valued his life greatly. In complete despair now, one could only imagine how desperate he had become. Ha! So be it. Let's all die together. The mad Luo Hao, after shaking off God Emperor Mo Long, raised his transcendent innate treasure high and charged at Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Is he planning to self-destruct his source? God Emperor Mo Long grinned wickedly. His golden gauntlets still bore traces of Luo Hao's blood, dripping off slowly, as if symbolizing Luo Hao's life gradually fading away. Swish! Jian Wushuang, who also held control over the Grand Formation, instantly shifted his position, vanishing on the spot. To think they could drag him down with them within this formation was utterly laughable. Ha! Jian Wushuang was taken aback, thinking, what about Hu Qing? Considering the distance just now, there was enough time for Hu Qing, who was not weak in strength, to teleport away with him. Although Hu Qing seemed significantly different now, there was still their deep bond. Jian Wushuang's figure flickered, and he returned to his original spot once more. Luo Hao had already fallen. There was not a trace of Luo Hao left in this world. He had vanished completely. Hu Qing still stood in the same spot, his hands extending a reddish-brown staff, with Luo Hao's innate treasure suspended above it. Ha! Jian Wushuang was taken aback. He had only left for a moment, and Luo Hao had fallen without a sound? In the distance, God Emperor Mo Long had unsealed all the ancient seals. His divine body instantly strengthened tenfold, and his power naturally increased tenfold. However, despite the suppression of the Wuliang Grand Formation, he resisted for only a moment. The pressure still weighed heavily upon him. Although his strength was suppressed by nearly 30%, it increased tenfold afterward. Now he had the strength of a peak Grand Yen Immortal, just shy of the threshold for perfected 9 revolutions in the outside world. Unfortunately, this array weakened his power by 30%. Mo Long glanced at Jian Wushuang first, then fixed his gaze on Hu Qing, clearly wary. Jian Wushuang now understood Luo Hao had fallen at the hands of Hu Qing. Regrettably, he hadn't witnessed any of this. Instead, God Emperor Mo Long had observed it all. Hu Qing, who could instantly kill a peak Grand Yen Immortal, and not just any peak Grand Yen Immortal but one who didn't care for his life. How strong must Hu Qing be? Jian Wushuang found it incredibly hard to accept. He had cultivated diligently for so long step by step, only to barely match the top Grand Yen Immortals at the peak of perfected 9 revolutions. Hu Qing, on the other hand, had entered the Tao and immediately displayed the strength of a perfected 9 revolutions expert. After entering the original planet, Hu Qing's power had increased significantly, comparable to his own, both possessing the strength of a top-tier 9 revolutions expert. But now, just after he had been gone for a day, Hu Qing had broken through again. It seemed his strength was no weaker than God Emperor Mo Long, who could wield the innate treasure. Otherwise, Mo Long wouldn't be so wary. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath to calm himself. Hu Qing had his secrets. He shouldn't pry too much. He didn't know how to broach the subject. Brother Wushuang, I've made some recent breakthroughs and forgot to inform you. Hu Qing seemed to sense Jian Wushuang's thoughts and broke the silence. Jian Wushuang smiled and shook his head. No need to be formal. Specific details about everyone's strength were vague. No one would willingly reveal their true power. It was normal for Hu Qing not to inform him after their breakthrough. God Emperor Mo Long, however, stared at the two of them as if he were observing monsters. Jian Wushuang, is this friend of yours from the Buddhist realm of Tongtian Buddha? Mo Long God Emperor probed. Because of Tongtian Buddha's influence, he had paid attention to the strong figures in the heaven-reaching Buddhist realm. Apart from Tao Lord Jiuyu, there were only a few worth noticing. The strongest among them was just a top-tier Grand Yen Immortal. How could there suddenly appear a limit-defying Grand Yen Immortal from the Tongtian Buddha realm on this original planet? Jian Wushuang didn't reply. He glanced at Hu Qing and merely nodded faintly. God Emperor Mo Long carefully recalled. He had clear memories of those on the Universe Deity Demon list who were stronger than him. Yet, he had no information about the person before him. Within the canyon, the atmosphere gradually solidified, thick with killing intent. Outside the mountains, the 3 princes of the Daluo realm gathered together, swiftly flying toward the direction of the canyon. Luo Hao has fallen, said a burly man. his eyes radiating a golden glow. His entire body was tightly wrapped, revealing only a pair of faint golden eyes. His voice sounded exceptionally deep and gloomy. Boom! The three accelerated once more, heading straight for the canyon. The burly man was none other than the chief imperial son of the Daluo realm, with strength comparable to a limit-defying Grand Yen Immortal. The other two with him possessed the power of peak Grand Yen Immortals. When these three gathered, they feared no one except for a few Dao Lords ranked at the top of this original planet. God Emperor Mo Long was merely a peak Grand Yen Immortal, and according to the late Luo Hao, God Emperor Mo Long hadn't fully recovered, and his divine body was damaged. In his madness, Luo Hao hadn't told them that there was another peak expert as formidable as God Emperor Mo Long. Back in the Daluo realm, the 10 princes fiercely competed against each other. However, it was only upon entering the original planet that they started forming alliances. Even if they were forming alliances without certainty, it wasn't wise to rashly venture so far to rescue Luo Hao. In the pursuit of advantage, there had to be a significant gain. For instance, God Emperor Mo Long bore wounds, a peak Grand Yen Immortal injured and yet still ranked over 500. His achievements were plentiful. It was the prospect of this ripe opportunity that had driven them to traverse such distances to rescue Luo Hao. Now, with Luo Hao fallen, they were left only with the echoes of their previous connection, searching for the whereabouts of God Emperor Mo Long. If they couldn't find him, so be it. If they did, they planned to exact revenge under the pretext of justice, severing God Emperor Mo Long and dividing his spoils of war. Among the 3 top-tier Grand Yen Immortals, the strongest accelerated their pace once more. Within the canyon, the Grand Formation teetered on the brink of collapse amidst the chaotic battle, ready to crumble at any moment. The power of God Emperor Mo long surpassed the imaginations of the two. Within the Grand Formation, his strength approached the limits of a Grand Yen Immortal. Outside this mystical space, even their combined efforts would be futile against Mo Long. Fortunately, the Wuliang Grand Formation continuously weakened God Emperor Mo Long, greatly enhancing the duo's strength and enabling them to hold their own against him. Perfected 9 revolutions of the extreme rank were exceedingly rare on this primitive planet. Each one of them ranked among the top 100, except for a few Dao Lords, making them the strongest entities. After years of tumultuous warfare, they had not heard of any extreme Grand Yen Immortal meeting their end. Each of them could hunt freely on the main continent, showing no fear towards those united perfected Grand Yen Immortals. It was no wonder that Mo Long had never been in a rush while dealing with Luo Hao. This was his trump card. Jian Wushuang, my list of achievements isn't extensive. Are you really going to force my hand? Mo Long discerned their intention. The two of them meant to detain him this time. What else would we do? Jian Wushuang's voice was icy. To lure you out, I nearly perished. How could I let you go now? Haha, good. Mo Long laughed triumphantly. Even if he managed to kill Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing at the cost of his life, he wouldn't gain much merit. He might even end up severely injured again. Jian Wushuang's strength was decent, not overly formidable even within the Grand Formation. However, Hu Qing was different. Empowered by the formation and possessing the peak strength of a Grand Yen Immortal, he could match Mo Long even within the formation. Now lacking the advantage in strength, Mo Long could only rely on his treasures to turn the tide. Hu Qing stood tall in the canyon, wielding a long staff with infinite power. His aura was overwhelming, impossible to ignore. After a brief pause, the 3 of them clashed once again. Boom! Hu Qing's figure instantly moved, causing countless mountains and rocks around him to tremble and shatter. In an instant, he appeared next to Mo Long. Bang! His staff technique was mysterious and unpredictable, colliding with Mo Long's fist technique. Both sides suffered losses, but before they could fully recover, they were locked in combat once more. Jian Wushuang, relying on his speed, targeted Mo Long's weak points with various sneak attacks. Kill! Jian Wushuang suddenly appeared behind God Emperor Mo Long and swung his long sword directly at his waist. The profound and sharp intent of the Starlake sword intent was displayed to its fullest extent, showcasing its terrifying power. Swish! While Mo Long's upper body continued to battle Hu Qing in midair, his lower body had already been severed. Due to the eruption of the secret treasure, his divine body's power had increased tenfold. His physical body damage was inconsequential, instantly healing in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang also realized that Mo Long, at such a mastery of his cultivation, was impervious to simple techniques. Although his attacks could break through the physical body, they couldn't harm the overall divine body. And Mo Long possessed a divine body protected by a supreme treasure, his physical form eternal. Fortunately, Hu Qing's staff techniques were powerful. Every move and strike carried immense power, enough to deplete a fraction of Mo Long's divine body. However, the amount he depleted was negligible to the mighty Mo Long. No, it's impossible to wear him down. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows. A grand spectacle descended. The fifth level of the ultimate Tao, Heart Sword World. The surge of heart power and sword intent propelled Jian Wushuang's momentum to the heavens. Heart Sword Trial. This was the strongest sword technique he comprehended during the sixth level of the ultimate Tao. Even though he hadn't had the chance to create more sword techniques after breaking through the mirror of the ultimate Tao, his current strongest sword strike, enhanced by both his heart power and the power of the Great Array, had reached its peak. With the augmentation of heart power, this strike caused the heavens and earth to change colors. The God Emperor Mo Long, who was battling Hu Qing, felt a jolt in his eye sockets and a tremor in his heart, thinking, "This is bad." The power of this strike might not have been overwhelmingly strong, but the underlying principles contained within it made it hard for him to catch his breath. Boom! 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 Hu Qing's staff techniques were perfect, leaving Mo Long with no opportunity to break free. Taking advantage of his distraction, Hu Qing instantly unleashed tens of thousands of strikes, firmly suppressing the God Emperor Mo Long. The long staff smashed into his flesh every time, causing damage to his divine body. Thousands of strikes in succession, he couldn't defend against most of them due to his distracted state. They all landed solidly on his flesh, carrying the potent power of the source, instantly eroding his divine form. Damn it! God Emperor Mo Long's mouth was now stained with golden blood. These were minor wounds, just scratches. The real blow came from the sword strike behind him. That sword strike shattered his state of mind, and at that moment, even the source began to tremble, making him incredibly anxious, frustrated, and restless. Ha! God Emperor Mo Long, how does it feel? Jian Wushuang distanced himself, looking at Mo Long from afar. His strongest sword strike, enhanced by the Grand Array, barely managed to injure the God Emperor Mo Long. However, Jian Wushuang was just a 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. As long as he advanced one step further, reaching the 9 revolutions, mastering the 9 revolutions Yen power, his strength would undergo a qualitative change. At that time, even without the Grand Array, he wouldn't fear any peak Grand Yen Immortal. Jian Wushuang, you have angered me, God Emperor Mo Long roared. At this moment, he completely ignored Hu Qing's long staff. Buzz! A dazzling light instantly illuminated the entire canyon. The Eye of the Beast God. It was the golden eye in the center of God Emperor Mo Long's forehead. At this moment, the Eye of the Beast God completely opened. Its function was not just to allow the divine body to burst with 10 times its power. It had a terrifying domain of its own. Beast God Shadow. A howl. A call from ancient times echoed out, and behind God Emperor Mo Long, the shadow of an ancient beast god appeared. It had a row of sharp white fangs, a towering and majestic body, and a perfect flesh that matched every inch of its bones. Every part of its structure was exceptionally compatible. Despite its huge body, its head was surprisingly small, perhaps because it lacked ears, making its skull look very round. However, its blood-stained large mouth was extraordinarily fierce, especially when its pale eyes stared at Jian Wushuang and others. It could affect a cultivator's state of mind, instilling fear in their hearts. If used against other powerful beings, the fear from the beast god's domain alone could terrify weaker Grand Yen Immortals to death. But Jian Wushuang was a practitioner who mastered heart power, an extremely rare ability in the entire universe. He had encountered very few heart power practitioners, perhaps only Wuliang Buddha. Controlling heart power, the slight fear within the beast DOD's domain couldn't affect him at all. Regarding Hu Qing, he had comprehended the Zen Dao in the ultimate Dao, making him impervious to such domains that influence mental states. The Zen Dao allowed Hu Qing to perceive his true nature clearly. It was the most suitable path among all ultimate Dao. Anyone who mastered the Zen technique faced almost no bottlenecks before reaching the perfected 9 revolutions. Understanding that everything in his mind was illusory, he became invulnerable. Only Dao merging could obstruct those who had mastered the Zen technique. If the Dao merging succeeded, it was unimaginable how powerful an ultimate emperor like him, well-versed in the Zen technique, could be. God Emperor Mo Long also sensed that something was amiss. Astonishingly, he couldn't discern any change in Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing's expressions. This is impossible. Mo Long was growing frantic. This was his strongest reliance, possessing the realm of beast gods. He feared not even the extreme Grand Yen Immortal and could even contend with them. But now he couldn't affect Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing in the slightest. Jian Wushuang, mastering the ultimate Dao, infused his sword intent with heart power. Being able to resist was one thing, but how could that monk resist as well? Could he also be a practitioner of heart power? Mo Long, with his extensive knowledge, was aware of the few powerful heart power practitioners in the universe. However, he hadn't heard of anyone in the Grand Yen Immortal stage cultivating heart power. If he wasn't a practitioner of heart power, then he must have comprehended the ultimate Dao. Encountering 2 ultimate Dao practitioners all at once, he didn't know whether he was incredibly lucky or terribly unlucky. Unlucky because he encountered 2 freaks. Lucky because these 2 hadn't fully matured yet. If both of them attained perfected 9 revolutions with the ultimate Dao, they would have been equivalent to 2 half-step emperor-level figures. Jian Wushuang's eyes glinted with hostility. It seemed that Mo Long had exhausted his trump cards. Now it was his turn. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you have many treasures? Jian Wushuang sneered, sheathing the long sword and gesturing with one hand. Today, I'll show you what a true domain is. Buzz. Hu Qing subtly adjusted his footing, his gaze fixed on Jian Wushuang, secretly astonished. Could it be? One thought universe. Jian Wushuang clenched his right hand. The yen power within millions of miles around the gorge instantly surged, and a grand illusion of the origin source Great Dao emerged, suppressing everything. The countless Great Dao contained within the grand formation began to tremble. The beast god's domain, displayed by God Emperor Mo Long, started collapsing directly. When the beast god's phantom saw the starry sky of the one thought universe, a longing expression appeared in its pale eyes for a moment. However, it instantly crumbled, unable to cast its gaze one last time. Outside, the 3 Daluo realm princes, who were very close to the valley, trembled as they stared at the circular barrier in the distance. Something's wrong. There's another powerful being. The first prince's eyes flickered with surprise. They were worried about not being able to find God Emperor Mo Long unexpectedly. A battle had broken out nearby, showing the might of a peak Grand Yen Immortal. It must be that Mo Long hadn't gone far. Peak Grand Yen Immortals were rare in the mountains. Now that Luo Hao had just fallen, Mo Long, with his cunning mind, would definitely quickly leave and conceal his aura. They came here with the hope of catching him. Perhaps they had found something after all. Now, in hindsight, the situation unfolded even more perfectly than they had imagined. Mo Long and the other formidable beings confronted each other, and they could now reap the benefits of others' efforts. Quick! Urged Daluo Realm's first prince, barely containing her excitement. Although they were not far from their destination, they still feared unexpected surprises. After all, they were facing a Grand Yen Immortal, albeit one who was already injured. A ripe piece of meat waiting to be devoured. If they could kill Mo Long, the 3 of them could retire comfortably for the rest of their lives in the mountains. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang and his companions were unaware that several princes of the Daluo realm had already noticed them and were swiftly closing in. "This is a domain," God Emperor Mo Long said, his eyes scanning the illusory universe spanning millions of miles around him, a look of disbelief on his face. No, the universe wasn't illusory. It was a real, existing miniature world devoid of life but containing a vast and magnificent great Tao. In this place, Jian Wushuang was in his element. The first time he unleashed his one-thought universe, it spanned only 1,000,000 miles. At that time, with the power of a 3-revolution cultivator, he could contend with a perfected 9 revolutions expert like Xiang Binyun. Although Xiang Binyun had just recovered and wasn't exceptionally strong among perfected 9 revolutions experts, the one-thought universe was merely 1,000,000 miles in size back then. Now, its range had expanded tenfold. However, his combat power didn't merely increase tenfold but surpassed it by 100-fold. This was Jian Wushuang's trump card, the one-thought universe, a universe created with a single thought. Within millions of miles, he reigned supreme. This was his Tao arena, his domain, a mobile one at that. The amplification of the Wuliang Grand Formation endowed him with the strength of a top-tier Grand Yen Immortal. The Heartsword world enhanced his sword intent to its peak level. And the one-thought universe allowed him to increase his combat power tenfold. This was not like Mo Long's Eye of the Beast God, which was only unsealed, eliminating potential future troubles, and thus strengthening him tenfold. Jian Wushuang had genuinely transformed this increase into actual combat strength, effectively tripling it. One-thought universe amplified Jian Wushuang's power tenfold, propelling him to the pinnacle of Grand Yen Immortals. Within the Heartsword world, his sword intent equaled the combat prowess of the extreme-level Grand Yen Immortal. Jian Wushuang hovered in the air, an ordinary treasured long sword materializing in his hand, sword intent emanating. Heartsword world. Empowered by yen power spanning millions of miles, within the Heartsword world, myriad sword energies condensed, eventually forming an immensely colossal sword shadow. Swish! The sword shadow shot straight toward God Emperor Mo Long, who frantically resisted using his complete set of golden dragon armor. Yet, the sword tip still pierced his flesh, an unprecedented murderous intent beginning to devour his divine body, impervious treasures unable to staunch the assault. Bang! Ah! Mo Long endured immense pain, breaking free from the illusory long sword only after a fierce struggle. Just one strike shattered his perfected physical body, depleting 1,000th of his divine essence. And this was just a fleeting moment. Hum! 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 The illusory longsword split into 9 swords, encircling God Emperor Mo Long. Although the illusory longsword had divided, the contained power showed no decrease. Based on the illusory longsword deduced from the Heartsword world, it differed from the Heartsword trial. The former was aligned with the one-thought universe. Only within this universe could he condense the illusory longsword. In a universe spanning millions of miles, he could manipulate at most 9 illusory longswords. Let's call it the illusion sword trial, Jian Wushuang said lightly. Given his mastery of the sword Tao, the move he had just spontaneously created still required refinement, such as the 9 illusory longswords forming a sword array to enhance its killing potential. However, he didn't have time to ponder these matters now. 9 illusory longswords were more than enough to deal with Mo Long. Hu Qing, go intercept him. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed. He noticed a crimson crystal pillar suddenly appearing in Mo Long's hand. Having seen Luo Hao's black crystal pillar, he knew how terrifying these items could be. Mo Long possessed the seal of suppression, along with the transcendent innate high-grade treasure, the Zheng Jade Tower. Both treasures had the power to suppress. The seal of suppression was akin to a mobile miniature formation. In times of danger, he could take refuge within it. Jian Wushuang, however, had no such treasures now. He only had an ordinary long sword. Not a single one of the Grand Yen Immortals he killed possessed any exceptional abilities or treasures. Ever since witnessing the treasures of God Emperor Mo Long, Jian Wushuang's horizons had broadened. What he had once coveted as supreme treasures seemed trivial now. Aside from peak treasures, All other treasures appeared as worthless as scrap metal. That crimson crystal pillar sent shivers down Jian Wushuang's spine. That thing was definitely not something benign. Hu Qing, upon hearing Jian Wushuang's words, rushed forward attempting to stop God Emperor Mo Long. However, he was too late. God Emperor Mo Long placed the crimson crystal pillar into the groove on top of the Zheng Jade Tower. A surge of blood-red light began to rise. The crimson crystal pillar was not the destructive god crystal Jian Wushuang had imagined. It didn't explode. Instead, it transformed into a stream of blood, pouring onto the top of the Zheng Jade Tower. This stream of blood flowed down the top of the tower, irrigating the entire structure before dripping onto the seal of suppression. The blood merged into the 8 eyes, and a scarlet mist started to rise. God Emperor Mo Long's eyes turned bloodshot. Under the irrigation of the blood, the seal of suppression unexpectedly fused with the Zheng Jade Tower. This is my father's transcendent innate treasure that ruled the world. You have the privilege of witnessing the might of the Blood Jade Palace. Consider yourselves fortunate. Even God Emperor Mo Long hadn't anticipated that this was only the first step of the trial, forcing him to reveal his ultimate card. If the ancient treasure, the Eye of the Beast God, was an item used to enhance one's strength, then this Blood Jade Palace was the life-saving treasure his father had bequeathed him. Although the Eye of the Beast God possessed extraordinary power, there was no similar treasure in the entire original universe. It was an ancient treasure his father had acquired from the river of time and space. Despite its unique power, once one reached the level of a Tier 4 emperor, his father found no use for it. He was bestowed with it. Few knew the true posmer of this secret treasure. If its secrets were revealed, even Tier 3 emperors would go mad with desire. At the emperor level, treasures that could enhance an emperor's strength were never put up for sale. Even if they were, the prices would be exorbitant. The Blood Jade Palace was undoubtedly the pinnacle among innate treasures, the most precious palace-type treasure in existence. Mo Long's father had roamed the original universe with it, even drifting through the river of time and space. If not for the Qishan Temple, he wouldn't have given such a treasure to his son. This treasure was akin to an adult gifting a spirited horse to a 3-year-old child. It was simply squandering a priceless gem. Mo Long lacked the ability to control the Blood Jade Palace. It was only because his father condensed his own crystallized blood essence that he could partially unleash the palace's power. Nevertheless, this power was enough for him to maintain secrecy. Jian Wushuang stared at the Blood Jade Palace, his astonishment deepening. This treasure, something he had never seen before, Mo Long, the God Emperor, had several of them. Mo Long hadn't anticipated that killing a 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal would be this difficult, nor did he foresee that in such advantageous circumstances, he would be so unlucky as to encounter God Emperor Mo Long, a peak expert who was over 500 places ahead of him. The Blood Jade Palace felt unshakable to him. If God Emperor Mo Long escaped sitting on the Blood Jade Palace, the Grand Array wouldn't stop him, and neither would his one-thought universe. It's so close. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed to pinpricks. After a lot of effort, he couldn't catch anything, and now he had to watch Mo Long escape on the Blood Jade Palace. This was hard for Jian Wushuang to accept. Even with a strong mentality and the ability to see through everything, he sighed internally. Hu Qing, on the other hand, remained calm. His power had grown rapidly. He had already reached the peak of Grand Yen Immortal. Even if this plan failed, he could still go outside and kill other 9 revolutions with his strength to gain achievements. Although he was now a 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal and could only get 10 times the points with a bit of luck, if he managed to kill a group of perfected 9 revolutions, he might enter the top 100. After all, he had just killed Luo Hao, gaining a significant achievement and entering the top 1,000. Brother Wushuang, it's irreversible. Hu Qing had a glimpse of enlightenment and calculated the development of the situation. They couldn't shake the power of the Blood Jade Palace. If they forcefully attacked, they might be counterattacked. Jian Wushuang floated in mid-air, 9 long swords returning to his side. He didn't speak, just nodded. The Wuliang Grand Formation was riddled with holes. This move was ineffective. If Mo Long could really escape, they would have to find another way out. Although this place was deep in the mountains, such a big commotion might have already been reported to the main continent by those weaker, perfected 9 revolutions who stayed behind in the mountains. Since Daluo realm had left Luo Hao in the mountains, other forces must have had spies hidden deep in the mountains to observe the situation. After all, the mountains occupied 90% of the original planet's territory. Why afraid to attack me? Mo Long sneered while sitting on the throne. If Jian Wushuang and the others didn't attack the Blood Jade Palace, Missouri Long truly had no way to deal with them. Mo Long's strength couldn't control the Blood Jade Palace. If he wanted the Blood Jade Palace to suppress his opponents, he had to make them attack the Blood Jade Palace first. As a peak-level transcendent innate treasure, the Blood Jade Palace had self-defense capabilities. When attacked by a strong enemy, it would automatically raise a blood shield. Not only could it defend the Blood Jade Palace itself, but it could also shoot out blood pillars to kill enemies attacking the Blood Jade Palace. However, once the power of the Crimson Crystal Pillars was depleted, the blood shield would dissipate. No more words. Mo Long kept raising the Blood Jade Palace higher. The Wuliang Grand Formation trembled and was shattered by the blood pillars. Hu Qing controlled the Grand Array, trying to hold off the Blood Jade Palace for as long as possible. This was a super strong individual ranking in the top 500. If he escaped now, they would suffer a significant loss. They had to delay him as much as possible. His mind moved, and the information from the identity token flowed into his mind. Trial participant. Hu Qing Cultivation. 9 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal Achievements. 1, 0, 40, 0 ranking. 716. This ranking wasn't very stable even within the top 1,000, let alone breaking into the top 100. When he killed a perfected 9 revolutions, he gained 100,000 achievement points. Coupled with the points he obtained from Luo Hao, which numbered in the millions multiplied by 10, it became over 10 million achievement points. Some of these were shared with Mo Long and Jian Wushuang, considering their respective contributions based on the damage they caused. The Grand Array's barrier began to shatter incessantly, cascading down from the sky. Once devoid of the array's support and suppression, Jian Wushuang and his companion found themselves bereft of any advantage. This sucks. Jian Wushuang stood tall in the open sky, helplessly gazing at the Blood Jade Palace. After fighting for such a long time, all he had gained was a few 100,000 battle achievement points. Luo Hao's death hardly affected him. His substantial gains were mainly due to the exponential increase in achievements from fighting opponents of higher realms. In a normal battle within the same realm, he would have gained only a few thousand achievement points. Currently, his ranking hadn't even reached the top 3,000, let alone the top 1,000. Hu Qing, is there really no way? He asked desperately. Hu Qing shook his head. The array is about to collapse. We must leave this place. His words had barely fallen when the Grand Array's barrier completely shattered, and the countless array nodes of the Wuliang Grand Formation automatically disintegrated. Under tremendous pressure, the Grand Array could no longer operate and collapsed automatically. Jian Wushuang, God Emperor Mo Long's eyes gleamed with killing intent. With the array now broken, he could engage in another battle. However, he was feeling somewhat apprehensive. Even without the Grand Array, he didn't dare to fight again. The treasures are abundant, truly allowing one to do as they please. Jian Wushuang's face turned ashen. He wanted to argue but couldn't find a reason. No matter how much he said now, God Emperor Mo Long would completely leave. He would be left with nothing but wasted effort. Hu Qing, who had killed Luo Hao, was at least now ranked in the top 1,000. If he went out and killed a few more perfected 9 revolutions within 30 years, he could comfortably secure his position within the top 1,000. Entering the top 100 wasn't an impossible feat either. As for himself, he was truly in a miserable situation. His strength was neither high nor low, comparable to the peak Grand Yen Immortals only by relying on the potential of one thought universe. He had to work tirelessly for 30 years to squeeze into the top 1,000. The priest Shuiwei%, who ranked among the top 1,000, found himself struggling towards the end. While he could amass significant achievement points in the earlier chaotic battles, it became increasingly challenging to defeat the perfected 9 revolutions experts in the later stages. Preserving his position within the top 1,000 seemed exceedingly difficult. Jian Wushuang, in his pursuit of strategic formations, had lost the precious advantage of engaging in the early chaos. Now, surpassing numerous formidable opponents ahead of him appeared nearly impossible. The Blood Jade Palace continued to ascend, though it was still confined within the boundaries of a one-thought universe. A range Jian Wushuang couldn't obstruct. He could only watch helplessly. God Emperor Mo Long gazed at Jian Wushuang's grim expression, laughing arrogantly before steering the Blood Jade Palace and vanishing into the void. "Let's depart as well," Jian Wushuang sighed. Just as he was about to retract the one-thought universe, Hu Qing stopped him. "There's still a chance, Brother Wushuang." Boom! The Blood Jade Palace, now nearing the edge of the one-thought universe, was suddenly struck by a force of annihilation, sending it millions of miles away. God Emperor Mo Long, who had just left, swiftly passed by Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Simultaneously, within the one-thought universe, 3 peak experts emerged. They were the 3 princes from the Daluo realm. Damn it! What kind of treasure is this? It's actually rebounding against my origin source Great Tao. The chief prince of the Daluo realm scowled deeply. Upon their arrival, they witnessed God Emperor Mo Long trying to escape while steering the Blood Jade Palace. Naturally, they couldn't let him go. From a distance of 1,000,000 miles, the chief prince of the Daluo realm unleashed his spear of annihilation, directly smashing into the Blood Jade Palace's blood shield. Although he managed to halt the Blood Jade Palace, the scarlet energy also affected his consciousness. The blood-red mist seeped through causality, beginning to invade his origin source Great Tao. "Mi Luo, what's happening?" The other 2 princes beside him noticed something was amiss and hurriedly inquired. They were unaware of the mysteries of the Blood Jade Palace, their caution instead reserved for the one-thought universe. "Be wary, Mo Long. Do not act recklessly." Chief Prince Mi Luo endured his pain, cautioning them. The 3 of them swiftly appeared before Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Recognizing the newcomers, Jian Wushuang felt a surge of joy. Mi Luo, the peak Grand Yen Immortal of the Daluo realm, and a formidable expert. Jian Wushuang had encountered him at the Qishui Hall. The ruler of the Daluo realm, the emperor, was exceptionally powerful. Mi Luo, regarded as one of the foremost princes, was renowned for his strength. He ranked just below the extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. The contemporary princes were remarkably young. Only Grand Yen Immortals with the potential to advance to emperors could be bestowed the title of prince. Those Grand Yen Immortals who had cultivated for countless chaotic eras lacked the qualifications to be named princes. Their potential had long been exhausted. Even with the strength of a limit Grand Yen Immortal, it was challenging for them to successfully merge with the Tao. However, the situation was different for these princes. Their relatively brief cultivation periods, coupled with exceptionally high talent, set them apart. The Grand Yen Immortals in the Daluo realm, including those like Mi Luo, had not practiced for more than 100 million years. In the eyes of the emperors, they were still adolescents. Possessing such strength at this age meant they had the potential to become emperors. Hence, their status was even higher than that of extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. After all, they were Grand Yen Immortals with the potential to become emperors in the future. However, this time, with the opening of the Qishan Temple, those Grand Yen Immortals who had lost hope in merging the Tao were once again valued. Ironically, these old fellows became the protagonists, and the princes were overlooked. However, there was an exception, the chief prince of the Daluo realm, Mi Luff. He had cultivated for 70 million years, attaining a power comparable to that of the extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. The emperors had high hopes for him. To enhance his chances of survival, he was bestowed with innate treasures, one to protect his divine body, the other to guard his origin source. He himself was a powerhouse who mastered the Tao of destruction from the origin source, his attacks already on par with the extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. Hu Qing, be cautious of Mi Luo. His strength rivals that of God Emperor Mo Long. Jian Wushuang remained outwardly calm but transmitted his thoughts to Hu Qing. If it were just the 2 of them, they wouldn't fear, but now they faced 3 peak-level experts, with Mi Luo being no less formidable than God Emperor Mo Long. Without the support of the Grand Array, their strength significantly diminished. They had also lost their means to suppress the opponents, making their situation even worse. Now, the two of you answer truthfully. Have you understood? Mi Luo suppressed the bloody mist in his mind and looked at Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Before Jian Wushuang could respond, the Blood Jade Palace flew out from the ruins of the canyon, its majestic and domineering voice echoing in all directions. Mi Luo, you dare to come? God Emperor Mo Long was infuriated. Initially, he had calculated to lure Mi Luo over through Luo Hao, and that plan had succeeded. However, he hadn't anticipated that Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing would force him to resort to using the Blood Jade Palace. It was too late now. If they had arrived a bit earlier, before Luo Hao's fall, he might have had the confidence to detain them. Mo Long, I spared you last time. Do you dare to be arrogant again? Mi Luo snorted coldly. In their previous battle, Mi Luo had attempted to take advantage of Mo Long but failed to kill him. He had almost perished in that battle himself. Enemies meeting often sparks intense emotions, and Jian Wushuang was quick to strategize the situation on the battlefield. As long as the fighting persisted, he could find gains amidst the chaos. The arrival of these 3 individuals couldn't have been timelier. Yet, profiting amidst the tumultuous battles of 4 peak experts was no easy feat. Fortune lay amid danger. Life and death were momentarily set aside, for wealth and prosperity were the true path. Jian Wushuang cautiously spoke, Fellow Taoists, we had no intention of fighting. We concealed ourselves here. Oh, then speak the truth of what you witnessed, Mi Luo remarked, recognizing that Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing's abilities were not formidable enough to cause concern. However, God Emperor Mo Long furrowed his brow. Although unfamiliar with Jian Wushuang, he sensed the depths of his cunning from their recent encounter. My brother and I just entered this canyon and saw God Emperor Mo Long battling Luo Hao. Due to our limited strength, we joined forces with Luo Hao, attempting to fend off God Emperor Mo Long. Regrettably, we were defeated, and Luo Hao fell, Jian Wushuang said earnestly, his voice carrying a deep resentment towards God Emperor Mo Long. Mi Luo nodded knowingly, saying nonchalantly, Just as I expected. He was genuinely indifferent. He only wanted to understand the truth behind the situation. Let's do it. I'll deal with these 2. You all stop Mo Long. Mi Luo's figure suddenly surged forward, his spear soaring into the sky, its destructive power filling the entire valley. The aura of sword intent behind Jian Wushuang also surged. He knew these people weren't easily deceived. 9 illusory swords burst forth, aiming directly at Mi Luo. The illusory sword trial was created based on the ultimate Tao, the 6th level of the heart sword trial. It leaked the heart power from the heart sword, evolving it into illusions, forging the strongest sword intent today. The illusory sword trial. Whoosh! 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 Jian Wushuang's figure retreated, but his 9 illusory swords swiftly charged in the opposite direction. Help me hold him back, Jian Wushuang shouted. The power of the long spear was too overwhelming. Even a slight brush could lead to his downfall right there. Fortunately, this was the one-thought universe. His speed was remarkable, covering thousands of miles in an instant. He could match the speed of the perfected 9 revolutions, barely evading the deadly strike. Cold sweat trickled down his back after narrowly escaping that fatal blow. The trials between life and death further honed his supreme path. His mental power surged, expanding the universe once more. 11 million miles, 12 million miles, 15 million miles. Reached the limit. Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth against the oppressive force brought by his thought power. He maneuvered the illusory swords to block Emperor Mi Luo as much as possible. Hu Qing had arrived by this time. His brows furrowed slightly, but his staff erupted with formidable power. Without the support of a grand array, Hu Qing's strength only reached peak level. Against Mi Luo, who matched the perfected 9 revolutions, Hu Qing gained no advantage and even faced the risk of falling. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang manipulated the illusory swords from a distance, constantly ambushing Mi Luo, forcing him to divide his attention. This gave Hu Qing a momentary relief. The trio's battle perfectly replicated the earlier siege against God Emperor Mo Long. However, back then, they had the upper hand due to the Grand Array. Now, with the array in ruins, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing could only resist Mi Luo, who was on par with extreme level 9 revolutions, lacking the power to truly threaten him. On another battlefield in the distance, two Daluo realm princes, much stronger than Luo Hao, surrounded the Blood Jade Palace, uncertain about how to intervene. Suppress him. Don't personally engage. Mi Luo, unable to break free, transmitted his message to the two princes. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing's strength and coordination astonished Mi Luo. Both individuals weren't exceptionally powerful, yet they couldn't defeat him. Especially within this circular universe formation, the longer he stayed, the more uneasy he became. Felt far from simple. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang flickered and appeared at the topmost part of a one-thought universe. With his thought power merged with the universe, his strength doubled. However, suppressing Mi Luo proved exceedingly challenging. Without the reinforcement of an array, he could manage ordinary peak Grand Yen Immortals. Still, Mi Luo's power was overwhelming, already reaching extreme level 9 revolutions. Jian Wushuang found it impossible to suppress him. Unless the extreme Dao and heart power were elevated, he could not suppress Prince Mi Luo. However, the extreme Dao, as vast as it was, could not be elevated at will, and heart power was an intangible and elusive concept. It wasn't a path one could break through just because they desired to. At this moment, his only hope lay in channeling his thought power entirely into one thought universe, enhancing the might of that one thought universe to suppress Mi Luo. As for the princes from the other Daluo realm, even though they could suppress the peak-level Grand Yen Immortals at this moment, the two of them were dealing with Mo Long. There was no need to bother with the other princes. Jian Wushuang even planned to suppress Mo Long when the chance came along. This would force Mo Long into a situation where he had to fight back. Once his strength was suppressed, the power of the Blood Jade Palace would also decrease. The two peak-level Grand Yen Immortals would still have a chance to hold back the Blood Jade Palace with their full strength. Even if they couldn't hold back the Blood Jade Palace at that time, he could divert Mi Luo's attention and let Mi Luo break through the Blood Jade Palace. By then, in the chaos, Jian Wushuang wouldn't be under too much pressure. Buzz! His thought power continuously poured into the one-thought universe. This time, instead of expanding, the universe began to contract. There was no other way. Jian Wushuang's current strength was insufficient. He could only narrow down the range of the universe to 5 million miles. Although the range was smaller, the power increased tenfold. Other powerful beings instantly noticed Jian Wushuang. God Emperor Mo Long had witnessed Jian Wushuang's abilities before. He shouted loudly, "Hurry and stop him, fools!" Before the other princes from Daluo realm could react, Jian Wushuang's yen power trembled, evaporating the sweat on his body. Weakly, he said, "It's too late." Boom! Waves of energy rippled across the cosmic barrier, causing both Mi Luo and Mo Long below to shudder. It felt as though their bodies were being compressed. How is this possible? Mi Luo could hardly believe it. He sensed his power being suppressed significantly, at least by 30%. Mo Long was familiar with this sensation. He didn't express surprise, just sighed. The two princes from the Daluo realm, however, felt no discomfort, but they could sense that both Mi Luo and Mo Long had significantly weakened. This turn of events was a tremendous boon for them. The strength of two beings on par with the utmost limits was diminished. This meant their own power surged, instantly putting them on equal footing. They could now fairly compete for victories. In the Daluo realm, these princes were equals, each unwilling to yield to the other. It was the constraints of the emperor that kept them from harming their own kind. Otherwise, Luo Hao wouldn't have uttered those words before his fall. Everyone was striving for their own gains. These princes were working together and forced to play by the rules. Jian Wushuang was a person outside the influence of major powers. He had no significant background, except for the emperor in the Great Sea region Zhenwuyang. However, he had chosen the wrong side, aligning himself with the Qishui Hall, while Zhen Wuyang joined the Eternal Tower. Now, his connections were primarily with the Tongtian Buddha realm. In the future, he would need to visit the Tongtian Buddha realm to settle the karmic calamity in his body and seek their help. Since advancing to the 6 revolutions, the karmic debt and calamity on him had gradually increased. Although it didn't affect him at the moment, it had to be resolved before he merged the Tao. He managed to befriend the monks within the great desolate wilderness, which seemed to be the universe's favor toward him. If he were to become enemies with the Tongtian Buddha realm, he didn't know how to resolve the karmic debt in his body. Hu Qing had become skilled in the ultimate Tao and his strength had greatly increased. After becoming a half-step emperor in the future, he would definitely receive attention from the Tongtian Buddha realm. At that time, his status would be very high. Jian Wushuang could seek help from Wuliang Buddha through this relationship to resolve his karmic calamity. However, all of this had to wait until the trial of the Qishan Temple ended. Only 1/10 of the first step, the original planet trial, had passed. Everything was still far away. He didn't know where those emperors were. Countless Yan Immortals had been plundered there. The Grand Yan Immortals were just a part of it, and everything was still unclear and confusing. Jian Wushuang held his breath, focusing his mind, and hurriedly replenished his energy. Infusing thought power into one thought universe had overdrafted his abilities significantly. Fortunately, the power of the original universe was formidable enough to prevent any damage to the origin source. Kill! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and the 9 auras, enhanced once again, burst forth in a myriad of illusions. Comparable to the killing power of an extreme-level Grand Yan Immortal, they shattered countless mountains and headed straight for Prince Mi Luo. Originally having the upper hand, Prince Mi Luo, now suppressed in strength, was managing against Hu Qing. However, he had to be on constant guard against Jian Wushuang's sneak attacks, making him utterly miserable. Although his treasures were perfectly attuned to his being, their quality paled in comparison to God Emperor Mo Long's. The combined power of all the treasures on his person was still inferior to the components of the Blood Jade Palace controlled by God Emperor Mo Long. Faced with this life-threatening situation, he had no hidden cards for protection. He could only endure the onslaught. Pay no attention to Mo Long. Help me kill this little bald donkey. Mi Luo was starting to falter, directly calling out for assistance from the other 2 princes. However, the situation had just turned in favor of the others. The blood shield had been shattered, and although the 2 of them had sustained minor injuries, it didn't significantly impair their abilities. At this moment, God Emperor Mo Long, now without the protection of the Blood Jade Palace, looked somewhat desperate. Being besieged by 2 peak Grand Yan Immortals at full strength, his situation was even worse than that of Prince Mi Luo. Mo Long, today you will die. The treasures on your body will belong to the 2 of us. Every time Mo Long was severely injured, the 2 of them became even more frenzied in their attacks, not hesitating to harm themselves in the process, exchanging injuries for injuries to deal with Mo Long. If they could obtain the supreme treasure of God Emperor Mo Long, even if they didn't advance in the top 1,000, they wouldn't suffer losses. The treasures of God Emperor Mo Long were enough to make even an emperor covet. No matter how powerful Qishan Temple was, and no matter how many benefits it had, they couldn't possibly bestow such treasures upon the 2 of them. They attacked insanely, paying no attention to Mi Luo's shouts. Originally, Mi Luo was the main force and they only had to restrain. Of course, the benefits they received in the end were also the least because their strength couldn't match Mi Luo's might. But now, with the constant exchange of power, their strength could rival both the suppressed Mi Luo and Mo Long. Such a golden opportunity, how could they possibly let it slip away? As for Mi Luo, they couldn't care less. Once they seized Mo Long's supreme treasure, they would no longer fear Mi Luo. Kill him. Don't give him a chance to catch his breath. 2 separate supreme treasures couldn't suppress them at all. Mo Long fled in a sorry state, trying to escape the boundaries of the universe of a single thought, but the imperial sons of the Daluo realm didn't give him that chance. Damn it! All of you deserve to die. Mo Long gritted his teeth in anger and roared. You've all been deceived. Once Mi Luo falls, we'll all die. Hurry, go help Mi Luo kill Hu Qing. He embodies the ultimate Tao, and Jian Wushuang also embodies the ultimate Tao. If you don't go now, there won't be another chance. Splurt. An incredibly sharp flying disc tore through Mo Long's physical body, directly piercing him, causing significant damage to his divine body. Unbelievable. A single slash damaged 1% of my divine body. Mo Long completely lost his composure. These two madmen had started burning their origin sources. Weren't they afraid of leaving hidden injuries? Junior brother, I burned 1/10 of my origin source just to break through 1% of his divine body. His defense is too strong. One need to find an opportunity to severely injure him and then burn my origin source again. Otherwise, I won't be able to defeat him. The white-haired prince from the Daluo realm spoke with a hint of malice in his eyes. Good, you endure for 3 breaths, and I'll deal him a heavy blow. The young prince laughed manically. Were all the princes from the Daluo realm like this? Jian Wushuang sneered, his thought power trembling. Now he was just like them, burning his heart and thought power to enhance his one-thought universe. It was a matter of who could endure longer. Since you're all so crazy, let me help you a bit more. Jian Wushuang's thought power moved, using one thought universe to enhance the strength of the two men by 30%. This was his limit, boosting the strength of Hu Qing and the two princes from the Daluo realm, suppressing the peak powerhouses who could rival Extreme Level 9 Revolution's Grand Yen Immortals. Ha ha! Senior brother, I feel my origin source has been strengthened. Me too. Quick! Take advantage of the enhanced origin source and kill Mo Long in one fell swoop. Mo Long's pale purple skin turned even whiter with anger. He had been beaten so badly that he was starting to lose his sanity, muttering to himself, "Fools, fools, all must die." Countless rotating flying blades, under the enhancement of their origin sources, kept harvesting Mo Long's divine body. He had no choice but to burn his origin source to resist. Mi Luo barely dodged Jian Wushuang's illusory sword again, his mouth dripping with blood. He roared in fury, "You deceived me!" Swish, swish, swish. He dodged one sword but couldn't avoid the remaining 8. Mi Luo screamed wildly as several illusory phantom swords pierced his body, causing him unbearable pain. Not only was his divine body damaged, but his origin source was also being consumed rapidly. Jian Wushuang's figure approached, his thought power moved, and 9 phantom swords were instantly pulled out. Along with the swords came not only bright red blood but also a large amount of origin source energy. In the instant they were pulled out, the thought power contained in the phantom swords began to devour the origin source power within Mi Luo's body. Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. With a movement of his psychic power, he said, "Devour!" Splash. Following several wounds, the phantom swords continued to devour the origin source power inside Mi Luo's body. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang remotely absorbed this origin source power to replenish himself. Originally heavily depleted and injured, he almost instantly restored his peak strength. Controlling his one-thought universe was no longer difficult. Instead, he became adept at it. The power he devoured once again allowed him to be reborn from the dead. The plan this time had approached perfection, uniting everything and making him invincible. Kill! The devouring power turned Jian Wushuang into a frenzy, his strength continually ascending. Ah! Mi Luo roared incessantly, clutching his head. His origin source was being devoured, causing him immense agony. Seizing the opportunity, Hu Qing swung his staff, a staff that could shake heaven and earth, smashing it onto Mi Luo's head. Bang! Mi Luo, suspended in the sky, was struck down into the ground, creating a deep pit of 100 miles. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing showed no mercy, descending directly into the crater caused by Mi Luo. The already healed wounds were once again torn open by the illusory phantom sword, relentlessly stabbing into Mi Luo's origin source. As long as there was a gap, the 9 phantom swords would greedily devour Mi Luo's origin source power. A plain and ordinary second-grade Great Tao, not yet the Tao after the fusion, couldn't withstand Jian Wushuang's devouring. He could devour even emperor-level Daos, let alone Mi Luo's minor Dao. I'll fight you to the end. Mi Luo struggled to stand up, his body slightly hunched. He raised his head, which was now somewhat lowered. Now, he was even more desperate than Mo Long ever since his origin source was damaged and devoured. His combat power had continuously declined. Not to mention Jian Wushuang, even the current Hu Qing could easily slaughter him. As a powerful being and the chief prince of a high-grade world, he, Mi Luo, would never kneel and die. Although he had no fondness for the other princes, and even engaged in secret struggles with them, he still tilted his head, glanced at them, and uttered 2 words, "Leave quickly!" Then his entire body transformed into a dazzling light. Hu Qing quickly retreated, while Jian Wushuang desperately charged forward, shouting, "No! Oh, the exquisite origin source! It shouldn't self-destruct." Jian Wushuang was like a young girl who had seen a withering flower, feeling deeply despondent. Such a delicious feast, destroyed just like that. The fall of the Grand Yen Immortal was vastly different from that of the Emperor. It couldn't form an Emperor's fall at all, merely dispensing a considerable amount of origin source power in the air. Looking at the pervasive aura of the origin source in the air, Jian Wushuang didn't let it go to waste. He controlled his hands and began to devour it. This origin source power was only 1/10 of Mi Luo's, which was too little. If Mi Luo hadn't self-destructed his origin source, he could have devoured much more. The more he devoured, the stronger he would become. Jian Wushuang could now sense that even without using the one-thought universe, he possessed power equal to top-tier 9 revolutions. Once he unleashed the one-thought universe, he would have genuine peak-level combat strength and could cross levels with his illusory sword, challenging the utmost limits. Jian Wushuang, enjoying the power of the origin source, could never have imagined that his actions would catch the attention of the highest authority in the Qixin Temple, the True Spirit. In the heart of the Qixin origin source, the True Spirit roamed the sea of origin source. This was a cosmic-level origin source, no longer a grand pillar but more like an endless expanse of water. Even during the initial stages of the highest trials, the True Spirit couldn't be bothered to intervene. Even trials at the level of emperors didn't capture its interest. A canopy that could rival an advanced world, when viewed within the sea of origin source, seemed insignificant. From top to bottom, it split into blocks the size of human figures. Through countless canopies, the True Spirit could observe anyone in the 3 major trial grounds. "Eh, what's this?" The True Spirit's eyes narrowed. That scene just now pulled it back to ancient times. He, or perhaps it, the current True Spirit, was neither human nor ghost. However, when it was first born and met its master for the first time, it was just a spirit of a treasure. But because of its master, it transformed from an it to a he, possessing all the qualities of a cultivator. It changed from a spirit to a living being. Couldn't forget its old master's instructions. Never dared to forget. Even though it had the power equivalent to the universe masters of and controlled the entire Qixin Temple, it never dared to forget. Stop him! The Great Devouring Dao was the Qixin's main cultivation Dao, a Dao that had reached the pinnacle of levels in ancient times. After numerous calculations and explorations, he realized that this path was utterly impassable. Even at the ultimate level, within the river of time and space, he was but a drop in the ocean. "This child, the path has been severed," murmured the True Spirit. Not to mention reaching the level of Oishan, even becoming an emperor was a formidable challenge. Qixin was a unique being from birth, naturally attuned to the ultimate Tao. He had become the most dazzling existence within the river of time and space. The path he couldn't traverse, let alone Jian Wushuang, a mere 6 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Not only was it impassable, but this Tao could also be treacherous. Qixin's fall was closely related to the Great Devouring Tao. Ultimate Tao practitioners were incredibly rare in the original universe. Although he had commanded the spirit slaves to plunder other universes for these ultimate Grand Yen Immortals, successfully merging the ultimate Tao was exceptionally challenging. The original universe had been fortunate enough to produce an ultimate emperor, but unfortunately, that emperor had followed the Tao of destruction, conflicting with the ancestral ways of the Qixin temple. At most, one could inherit the position of divine master. The mantle of Qixin still needed to be chosen from among the Yen Immortals and Grand Yen Immortals. The ultimate Tao was the best, but if that was impossible, it could be a special secondary grade Great Tao or someone who pursued the unity of myriad Taos. Even after this selection, there were at least tens of thousands of candidates. Moreover, many individuals would continue to break through during trials, possibly mastering the ultimate Tao. While those emperors might have considered themselves the main force, they were unaware that the true spirit was uninterested in them. Intriguing indeed. This little one's potential can be ranked in the top tier, a raw gem and the ultimate existence born of Zen insight. The old master would probably be very fond of him. The true spirit stroked his beard, growing fonder of Hu Qing, the little bald donkey, the more he looked at him. However, when he saw Jian Wushuang, a sense of regret and a trace of disgust crossed his face. This trace of disgust came from Qixin's distaste for his own great devouring Tao. So when the true spirit saw someone touching the great devouring Tao, he was displeased with Jian Wushuang. The true spirit, however, was unaware that Jian Wushuang's devouring was related to the extreme Tao, not the path Qixin had taken. 13. The true spirit called out, and a stooped old man appeared, holding a dark lamp within the sea of origin source. Have the people from the fourth hall retrieve some debris from the ancient ruins and throw it onto the original planet, adding some difficulty for these youngsters. The true spirit folded his hands behind his back, his gaze leaving that patch of firmament and moving to other patches. Also, give these emperors a little incentive. I feel like they're slacking off. Yes. 13th's voice was hoarse. As soon as he spoke, he disappeared above the sea of origin. A true spirit strolling in the sea of origin source suddenly felt a consciousness piercing through the layers of protection around the Qixin temple, directly invading the sea of origin source. How dare you? The true spirit erupted instantly. The originally kind expression vanished in an instant, replaced by an intense sternness. You old thing, why do you hinder my path? A large and hideous head hovered above the sea of origin source. Its hollow eye sockets emitted a dim light, and the entire head was uneven, exuding an evil aura. The true spirit, after clearly seeing the newcomer, snorted coldly. This is what the master ordered. I naturally have to do it. I don't care whose path I block. You! Black mist spewed out from the nostrils of the ugly head, roaring. Don't forget, I am a part of Qixin. I used to be your master's great Tao. The true spirit sneered. A great Tao cast away by the master dares to claim it's a part of Qixin. Although he said so, he was aware of the immense power of the great devouring Tao. Just now, he noticed the devouring technique displayed by Jian Wushuang, which had transformed into the taboo great devouring Tao of the forbidden demon lord. It had come to the Qixin temple. There was probably some kind of coincidence behind this. Humph, that old man had no idea about my strength. It was his own blindness. If he hadn't stripped me off, how could he have fallen? The grotesque head roared. Shut your mouth. The master is someone you, a filthy thing like you, can never insult. If you don't leave now, I'll suppress this avatar of yours in the Qixin temple and torment you for eternity. The true spirit thundered. Everything else could be tolerated except insulting the Qixin temple. That was his bottom line. Seeing the old man furious, the evil skull hesitated for a moment. Knowing he couldn't gain anything here, he began to disintegrate on his own. Before disintegrating, he couldn't help but threaten, just you wait. One day, I will break free from this seal and completely devour the original universe, restoring the glory of the great devouring Tao. Ha ha ha! The true spirit sneered contemptuously. Feel free to devour. The original universe isn't mine. I wouldn't care even if you devour yourself. The forbidden demon lord? Just a filthy insect. Just an insect that his master had removed from his body. Back then, his master's great devouring Tao was so powerful. He wouldn't even furrow his brows at devouring an entire universe. However, that filthy insect did have some abilities back in the day. It had devoured several universes, but in the end, a powerful being suppressed it in the original universe. Now, the seal was beginning to collapse, indicating that the being that suppressed it had also perished. The true spirit sighed. If the great devouring Tao still existed, perhaps his master wouldn't have fallen back then. But at that time, the Qixin was too strong, too arrogant. The great devouring Tao was a disaster. He had to remove it. One, for his own sake, and secondly, for the sake of the river of time and space. The fall of an emperor would give birth to emperor's fall, creating numerous ghosts and monsters capable of destroying a world without an emperor. As the peak existence in the river of time and space, the Qixin's great Tao was incredibly powerful. Even after being stripped away, that devouring Tao could easily trample over a universe. Fortunately, when Qixin fell, he attained enlightenment within the Qixin temple, preserving his complete great Tao within the temple. If he had fallen outside, his great Tao would either enrich a universe or give birth to the powerful forbidden demon lord. That forbidden demon lord, after being expelled years ago, developed self-awareness and roamed the river of time, causing havoc whenever it could. Luckily, a powerful being suppressed it later. Now, it re-emerged and encountered the Qixin temple once again, making the forbidden demon lord extremely wary. After all, it was something left by Qixin. He had known Qixin's plan back then. Now that the Qixin temple had opened in the original universe, he feared that it might cause a tremendous upheaval, ruining his plans. Thinking of threatening the true spirit, he ended up scaring himself away. At the heart of the original universe, within a massive cage, stood an enormous figure stretching billions of miles. No living being could approach this place. The malevolent aura emanating from this colossal figure was incredibly potent, corroding even the origin source. Even a Tier 5 emperor would have their consciousness affected here, damaging their origin source. This was also the most dangerous place in the original universe. Heaven's prison. The towering figure was the true form of the forbidden demon lord. Although the seal had started to loosen, he still couldn't move a step. According to calculations, it would still take tens of thousands of chaos cycles to break open the prison. Each epoch spanned billions of years, and he couldn't afford to wait for tens of thousands of chaos cycles. In the original universe, the Qixin temple had appeared. No one knew what the original universe would become in the future. What if a universe master emerged? He couldn't afford to delay any longer. Are they really forcing me to reveal my true strength? The forbidden demon lord sighed, his immense eyes shifting at that moment. 1,000,000 years more, that should suffice. I hope that little one grows up quickly. The forbidden demon lord sunk into contemplation again. At this moment, the tension in the original universe eased slightly. In the Qixin temple on the original planet, if Jian Wushuang knew that devouring Mi Luo's origin source would attract the attention of two peak-level existences in the universe, there was no telling how he would react. In the canyon, after Mi Luo's fall, the tide turned. Mi Luo self-destructed his origin source, leaving behind only intact armor on the ruins, along with a dark red pearl. Both were excellent innate treasures. Jian Wushuang naturally took them without hesitation and handed them to Hu Qing. Choose one for yourself. Hu Qing folded his hands and shook his head. A brown staff was innate to him. The stronger his treasure, the stronger he became. He didn't need any innate treasures. In that case, I won't hold back. Jian Wushuang smiled. He directly acknowledged ownership, immediately putting on the armor and taking the pearl that guarded the origin source. The pearl floated above the origin source, not only guarding the great Tao of the origin source but also nourishing it. Jian Wushuang felt refreshed, his mind much clearer. Brother Wushuang, what about those three? Hu Qing pointed to the three frenzied individuals. Calling them frenzied was not an exaggeration. 3 peak-level powerhouses burned their origin sources, fighting in a desperate melee. Punches and kicks were exchanged, nearly trading life for life. No matter how hard the two princes from the Daluo realm fought, they couldn't kill God Emperor Mo Long. This didn't mean Mo Long was exceptionally strong. Despite his numerous innate treasures, his strength was suppressed, making him inferior to the two counterparts of the same level. The reason he hadn't fallen was that when he was about to succumb, the pressure from the One Thought universe would loosen slightly due to Jian Wushuang's influence. Jian Wushuang would gradually loosen the restrictions to allow him to gain some strength to continue fighting. Now, all the restrictions had been released, even enhancing Mo Long's strength by 30%, allowing the fight to continue. The three princes from the Daluo realm thought they had an advantage, but in reality, they were evenly matched. After consuming their strength for so long, they were close to exhaustion. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing could easily deal with them. "It's time for settlement," Jian Wushuang said calmly. With a swift movement, he appeared above the three figures, looking down at the three peak-level experts huddled together. Smack! The prince of the Daluo realm slapped Emperor Mo Long's forehead, crushing the skull inward. TSK, junior brother, just one more blow. Spurt! Mo Long spat blood on his opponent's face, then raised his fist and smashed it into the chest of the Daluo realm prince, causing a deep depression. They had exhausted all their origin source power, unable to even recover their physical strength. Visible wounds marred the bodies of the three peak-level experts. Idiot! Mo Long repeated these words without saying anything else. Die! The Daluo realm prince used the last bit of his yen power, activated his universe ring, and pulled out a supreme treasure dagger. He thrust it into God Emperor Mo Long's neck, and golden blood spurted out of the wound. Splurt! The Daluo realm prince roared, and Mo Long roared back. He pulled the dagger out of his neck, no longer repeating the word idiot. With a gulp, Mo Long's face became unrecognizable, a wry smile playing on his lips. "You should have stabbed it into my skull." As he spoke, Mo Long gripped the dagger and squeezed out the last trace of his yen power, maneuvering the blade to create a streak of light. The two Daluo realm princes, clutching their throats, staggered backward. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't bear to watch. Such powerful beings had ended up in this pitiful state. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, the one-thought universe dissipated under his command, and Jian Wushuang no longer influenced their minds. He spared them a chance to catch their breath. Mo Long, surrender all your treasures and your achievements. I can spare your life, Jian Wushuang said calmly. Separated from each other, the three individuals lost their remaining vigor. Now, they could only sit amidst the ruins, gazing up at Jian Wushuang in his snow-white robes. What happened? How could Mi Luo fall? Only now did the two of them realize that Mi Luo had perished. You scoundrel! The prince of the Daluo realm endured the boiling blood within him and cursed in anger. Jian Wushuang, however, couldn't be bothered with these two. A sword chi swept out and killed one of them instantly. Hu Qing, the other one is yours, Jian Wushuang said casually. They had agreed on a 50-50 split, so it was 50-50. He didn't even know their rankings. Now, with a casual move, he killed one, leaving the other for Hu Qing. In essence, they jointly divided the spoils of a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal between the two of them. Hu Qing hesitated for a moment, then silently muttered something and struck with his palm. Finally, the remaining prince of the Daluo realm's physical body dissipated, and his divine body, along with his origin source, vanished without a trace, completely obliterated. The two of them gained corresponding achievement points, but the lion's share had already been taken by the main culprit, Mo Long. There was only one opponent left. Judging solely by achievement points, Mi Luo had the most. But in terms of treasures, Mo Long had the most among them all. In the entire universe, there were probably very few Grand Yen Immortals who possessed more treasures than God Emperor Mo Long. After all, not every Tier 4 Emperor had just one son. Perhaps only the direct relatives of Tier 5 Emperors could surpass the treasures on Mo Long's body. How about this? If you've thought it through, hand over all your treasures. Your life isn't worth much. Considering you helped me stall them for so long, I'll spare you, Jian Wushuang said. Jian Wushuang wasn't lying. His life was worth at most 100,000 points, a value he couldn't care less about. The reason he spared him was to gain control of the transcendent innate treasures. The Seal of Suppression and Suppressing Jade Pavilion were a set of innate treasures, the most valuable ones. Once he controlled them, it was like having an extra trump card. However, what Jian Wushuang wanted most was the Eye of the Beast God. A domain-type innate treasure was exceedingly rare. Few emperors possessed one, let alone grand Yen immortals. Although Jian Wushuang could use one thought universe, each use drained his thought power. With the Eye of the Beast God, he would alleviate a lot of pressure. At least he would have other options besides the one thought universe. Furthermore, the Eye of the Beast God contained a power that made him uneasy. He had to obtain this treasure intact. Since that Tier 4 emperor gave his son so many treasures, he must have left some hidden measures. Jian Wushuang was afraid that if he killed Mo Long, these treasures might be lost too. How can I trust you? Mo Long sat on a rock, his arrogance vanishing as he watched the two Daluo realm princes who were killed shortly after. In place of his arrogance, there was now the joy of victory. These two fools had no value even as pawns and were killed outright. Yet he still lived, negotiating with Jian Wushuang. In the life and death battle, he emerged victorious. Mo Long, his mind clouded, grinned manically. Jian Wushuang landed gracefully beside him, patting his shoulder and laughing heartily. I can swear to it. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Who would believe you? Mo Long's face darkened. In that case, there's nothing more to discuss. Mo Long raised his hand and hurriedly shouted. We can talk. I can give you all my treasures and battle achievement points, but you have to give me a guarantee. Jian Wushuang extended his left hand, fingers pointing skyward. Under the Qishan, I, Jian Wushuang, swear that after obtaining Mo Long's supreme treasures, I will not harm him in the slightest. If I break this oath, I shall face a deadly calamity. As his words fell, a strand of karma condensed in the sky and enveloped both of them. Mo Long nodded, then looked at Hu Qing. Hu Qing understood instantly. He didn't want more bloodshed either, so he made a vow following Jian Wushuang's example. Now can we proceed? Jian Wushuang squatted down, eyebrows raised, staring at Mo Long. 1 item, 2 items, 3 items. 100 items. Among them was the pinnacle-level innate treasure, the Blood Jade Tower, the only set of innate treasures of its kind. There were 3 top-grade transcendent innate treasures. 1 guarded the origin source, 1 protected the divine body, and the last was the Eye of the Beast God. The remaining 17 were at the level of transcendent innate treasures, while the rest were just ordinary peak treasures, including several excellent peak treasure sets. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but swallow saliva, saying casually, Brother Mo Long, did you steal these from the Emperor's treasury? Even Hu Qing, standing in the distance, was momentarily stunned. Some of those treasures seemed quite suitable for him. God Emperor Mo Long didn't dare to boast. Jian Wushuang, rest assured, there are absolutely no restrictions on these treasures. Your blood will suffice for their ownership to be transferred to you. If you don't believe me, I can swear to it. Jian Wushuang waved his hand dismissively. No need. Just tell me all the information about this treasure. Once the Eye of the Beast God was taken out, it resembled a rhombus-shaped gem. Its pale golden color was understated, but the ancient aura it exuded was authentic. In the original planet, deep within the mountains, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing arrived at a cave even more secluded than the previous canyon. Brother Wushuang, let's part ways here, Hu Qing said with a gentle smile, his hands clasped together. We'll meet again on the mainland. Jian Wushuang nodded. And so, the two of them parted ways. It was a separation planned from the beginning. Strong individuals were always lonely. Jian Wushuang followed the path of the ultimate sword Dao, the way of killing, while Hu Qing pursued the path of meditation and enlightenment. Different paths could not be forced to merge. In truth, Jian Wushuang wanted to avoid unnecessary trouble. Hu Qing harbored many secrets, intricately tied to the Qishan temple. Farewell. Jian Wushuang bid farewell, watching Hu Qing's figure disappear into the horizon. Then he returned to the cave. He set up a simple barrier around the cave, allowing him to sense everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. He wouldn't stay here for long. The Qishan temple was dangerous, but it also offered tremendous opportunities. Especially now, After reaching the 4th level of the extreme Tao and mastering the ability to devour everything with his thought power, he needed to keep fighting. During this brief respite, his priority was to refine the Eye of the Beast God. According to God Emperor Mo Long, the Eye of the Beast God was a relic his father had found in the depths of the River of Time, in the remnants of an ancient battlefield. It was called the Eye of the Beast God because the crystal resembled an eye and could summon an ancient beast god. At that time, Mo Long's father thought he had found a great treasure, but unfortunately, after refining it, the Eye of the Beast God was not as powerful as he had imagined. It wasn't of much use to the emperor, but the power of this ancient treasure was tremendous. It could enhance the divine bodies of ordinary beings tenfold. Apart from practicing powerful martial arts techniques, enhancing the strength of a divine body was incredibly difficult. However, this artifact could enhance the Grand Yen Immortal's divine body. Mo Long's father believed this item was extraordinary and bestowed it upon Mo Long. Indeed, the artifact was powerful. Its effect on the Grand Yen Immortal was perfect, stronger than any innate treasure. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on a flat stone bed, his forehead constantly shimmering as the Eye of the Beast God merged with him. Although he wasn't a special life form, his divine body was more robust than that of ordinary special life forms. At least within the Great Sea region, his divine body could be considered top-notch. However, in the entire original universe, his divine body's strength was quite ordinary. Take, for example, the special life forms under the command of Qishui. Each one possessed a divine body strength thousands of times greater than his. God Emperor Mo Long awakened the power of his bloodline because his father was the emperor. His divine body erupted with 500 times the power. But if you added the tenfold amplification from the Eye of the Beast God, he had a divine body strength of 5,000 times. 5,000 times was exceptionally strong among special beings. Often, it took countless epochs for a universe's secret realm to nurture a favored one with a divine body strength of 5,000 times. In the early epochs of the universe, there existed extraordinary beings, born with innate origin sources. These special life forms, nurtured in exceptional realms, were no less formidable than the rare second-tier origin source experts. Some among them even rivaled the ultimate Tao itself. The pinnacle of the original universe's potential gave birth to extraordinary beings capable of conceiving 10,000-fold divine bodies from birth. These creatures were unparalleled, and once born, they would be fiercely coveted by major powers, groomed into the prodigies of those powers. Upon successfully merging the Tao, they became supremely powerful entities among the Tier 4 emperors. Qishui, a wayfarer of the cosmic early days, was one such extraordinary being. Possessing a 10,000-told divine body, his understanding of the origin source was slightly lacking, but he was near perfection in every other aspect. His divine body seemed endless, a surplus that gave him the audacity to challenge even the peak powers. Moreover, he was currently the most promising candidate in the original universe to break through to the Tier 5 Emperor. In the future, he held immense potential to become a Tier 5 Emperor, the most supreme existence possible. Jian Wushuang's divine body, though impressive during his cultivation as a Yen Immortal, paled in comparison to these extraordinary beings after his ascension to Grand Yen Immortal. Fortunately, he had acquired the Eye of the Beast God, a treasure coveted by every Grand Yen Immortal in their dreams. This treasure directly amplified his divine body tenfold, not merely accumulating its strength. Now, Jian Wushuang's divine body was approximately 1,000-fold stronger. With a tenfold increase, wouldn't it be equivalent to a 10,000-fold genetic divine body? He could now directly rival the most powerful life forms in the universe. Buzz! A resonating hum echoed in his mind, signifying the complete fusion of the Eye of the Beast God. Start! Jian Wushuang suppressed his excitement. Double! Triple! Fivefold! Jian Wushuang hesitated for a moment, pushed his Eye of the Beast God to its limit, and his divine body ultimately multiplied sixfold. What's going on? Jian Wushuang wondered. Could it be that God Emperor Mo Long had deceived him? That shouldn't be the case. He uncertainly used his Eye of the Beast God again, stopping only when the shadow of the beast god behind him solidified. This time, it still amplified sixfold. Now his divine body had reached over 6,000 times its original strength. His every move could destroy heaven and earth. Because of his extreme Tao, his origin source was stronger than any other Grand Yen immortals. Even if he burned his origin source, he could exhaust those controllers of ultimate Tao. The only lacking aspect was the strength of his divine body. Now, with a sixfold amplification, possessing 6,000 times the genetic makeup, he rivaled those special life forms nurtured in high-grade worlds. Phew, the limits of the eye of the beast god are not fixed, Jian Wushuang concluded. The weaker the divine body of the person, the stronger his amplification. For instance, he could increase Mo Long's strength tenfold. If it were those special life forms, perhaps their increase would be only 1 or 2 times. Indeed, the universe was fair. For ordinary beings, especially humans, their life genes were weak, but their numbers were vast. Many in number and strong in comprehension, they were destined for greatness. As for ordinary beings, there were countless emperors who had achieved the Tao. The universe had tens of thousands of emperors who had ventured out of the original universe over countless years. Unsatisfied with their strength, they chose to drift in the river of time and space. But special life forms numbered only a few. This was the disparity. Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied with the sixfold amplification. This way, his divine body could carry more thought power, significantly enhancing his overall strength. Now, even if he was alone, he had the confidence to deal with ordinary peak-level Grand Yen immortals. However, if he encountered someone like Mo Long, he would still need to tread carefully. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief, retracted his eye of the beast god, and everything returned to calm. His divine body reverted to its original strength of 1,000 times. I need to find a way to enhance my divine body. 1,000 times. That was his limit back in the Great Sea region. Now, in the Qixin Temple, if he had the chance, he would prioritize enhancing his divine body. His divine body was his weak point and needed improvement. The treasures he acquired from Mo Long this time, he was unwilling to incur karmic debts. He forcibly gifted most of the treasures to Hu Qing. Apart from the beast god's eye, he also chose a transcendent innate treasure battle armor. The entire battle armor could envelop his entire body. With his divine body enhancement and the innate treasure battle armor, he was no longer afraid of close combat with those peak-level Grand Yen immortals. As for the Blood Jade Palace and the innate treasure for guarding the origin source, he gave them all to Hu Qing. Firstly, his origin source was strong enough, and now, with Mi Luo's innate treasures, it was sufficient. Secondly, Hu Qing's strength spanned greatly, and his origin source was unstable, requiring an innate treasure to guard it. The Blood Jade Palace contained many malicious energies, which could allow Hu Qing to refine himself and enhance his own strength. It was also more suitable for Hu Qing. They divided the remaining treasures based on enhancing their own combat power. Hu Qing didn't find the remaining ordinary treasures appealing since he came from a major power and followed the ultimate Tao. The Wuliang Buddha also bestowed him with many valuable items, so he gave all the remaining treasures to Jian Wushuang. Various emperor-grade pills and some exotic treasures, such as items that could conceal the aura of a Grand Yen immortal. These items were top-grade treasures in the outside world. Even if he didn't use them, he could sell them for other treasures. Now that Jian Wushuang was alone, he would need many more treasures in the future. Just the path of enhancing his divine body would require a considerable amount. This alone was a challenging task for him. The materials needed for a perfected physical body were exorbitantly expensive. After organizing his treasures once more, Jian Wushuang stowed them away and took out his identity token, checking his achievements. Trial list, Jian Wushuang Cultivation Realm. 6 Revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. This information cannot be viewed. Achievements. 43 to 96 million points ranking. 72 in the original planet Alpha 9. First, Tao Lord Shui Yu 2nd. PO June 3rd. Tao Lord Lang Shuang 68th. Hu Qing 72nd. Jian Wushuang both his and Hu Qing's rankings were within the top 100. and he had gained 30 million achievement points just from Michigan Luo alone. Even if he didn't venture out further and hid in the mountains, he could ensure a position within the top 1,000, possibly slipping out of the top 100 in the end. However, the rewards from the Qixin Temple only mentioned rewards for those within the top 1,000. As for whether the value of the treasures bestowed upon the first place and the 1,000th place experts was the same, he couldn't know. But he believed the treasure given to the first place was stronger. If they were all the same, there was no need for everyone to struggle to enter the top 1,000. They could just find a place to cultivate directly. Cultivating on the original planet was 100 times better than outside. This place could be said to be an unparalleled seclusion ground. However, no one believed the treasures given to the first and the 1,000th were the same. They, like Jian Wushuang, tried their best to squeeze into the top 100, even the top 10. Looking at it now, the top 3 were all experts at the Tao Lord level. The weakest in the top 10 were peak-level Grand Yen Immortals, and among the top 100, only a few were peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. Most were extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. These extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals were ancient relics who had lived through countless Yen ages. Those young princes and Taoists simply couldn't compete with them. The number 1 on the Universe Deity Demon list, Shui Yu Tao Lord, ranked around 400 in the Earth rankings. His power was comparable to that of Zhou Yu. Jian Wushuang had witnessed Zhou Yu's terrifying strength. A person capable of slaughtering hundreds or even thousands of perfected 9 revolutions experts, this kind of power in a Grand Yen Immortal was enough to kill him with just a glance. Even in the main continent, he had to avoid these Grand Yen Immortals who were titled as Tao Lords. Although they hadn't reached the level of half-step emperors, the difference was not substantial. At most, they were just slightly weaker than those half-step emperors who had mastered the ultimate Tao. The difference was only in the strength of their origin source. Jian Wushuang's path to becoming stronger was still very far ahead. At least on this original planet, he couldn't claim to be the strongest. On this planet, if his true strength could enter the top 100, it would be considered good. Fortunately, he had a lot of room for improvement. Unlike those third-grade origin great Tao practitioners, they had reached the end. When they were about to merge the Tao, their strength would only be at the level of peak Grand Yen Immortals. Currently at the 4th level of the extreme Tao, he could use his thought power to devour others' origin sources, allowing his strength to increase rapidly. By devouring a few more peak-level Grand Yen Immortals, he estimated that he could enter the 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal level. At that time, his strength would undergo a qualitative change, and his combat power would be comparable to that of extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. However, advancing in the extreme Tao was not so easy. Only by elevating the level of his Tao could he make a significant breakthrough. Every 3 levels in the Tao represented a major threshold. In the vast expanse of the stars, he achieved the first 3 levels effortlessly. Then, in the great desolate wilderness, he used his thought power to consume and stepped into the 4th level. The most crucial task at the moment was to swiftly elevate his extreme Tao to the 6th level. At that point, his devouring power would become terrifying. The origin source Tao of a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal, he could now consume 10%. At the 6th level of the extreme Tao, he could even entirely devour the origin source Tao of other Grand Yen Immortals. Ever since he gained this ability, his thirst for slaughter grew. This bloodlust carried a malevolent aura, which was precisely why the forbidden demon Lord Fengyu took an interest in him. It was a mutual attraction among their kind. Thankfully, they were within the Qixin Temple. Outside, he would undoubtedly have been classified as a demon. Just like the Grand Yen Immortals on the original planets, many were considered demons outside. Yet, they roamed freely, backed by emperor-level powerhouses. No one dared to touch them. Jian Wushuang was different. He couldn't be categorized as purely demonic now. He was an evil Grand Yen Immortal, relying on devouring his equally powerful peers to strengthen himself. Furthermore, he had no significant background. Once his extreme Tao reached the 6th level, even if he got stuck there and couldn't break through, he could still merge Taos. By that time, his strength would be practically unmatched below the Emperor's, capable of devouring any Grand Yen Immortal at will. This threat was enormous, especially considering his lack of significant backing. When the time came, the entire original universe wouldn't have a place for him. The devouring Tao was terrifying enough. What if he successfully merged Taos again? Those emperors would become his sustenance. Wouldn't they? They couldn't possibly turn a blind eye to this. Moreover, at that point, the very origin source of the universe would reject him. Devour the original universe? Jian Wushuang sighed deeply. Although he hadn't reached that point yet, he could already foresee the future. To contend against the origin source, even to consume it and reach the peak of the universe, it was an arduous enlightenment. Merging Taos was his tribulation. As for devouring the universe, it was nothing but a delusion. Whether the devouring Tao would lead anywhere, he didn't know. But now that he had embarked on this journey, he had to see it through. It wasn't about closure. It was about the path he had no choice but to tread. If he abandoned his devouring nature, his cultivation speed would slow down. That sense of bloodlust would one day become uncontrollable. Once it backfired, the consequences were unimaginable. Therefore, the true spirit of the Qixin Temple said his path was different. This rare trial's most precious treasures are these grand Yen immortals. Jian Wushuang, his eyes emanating a sinister aura, exclaimed, his eye sockets shrinking at the sight. The karmic calamity and killing tribulation on his body were likely the cause of his current predicament. This situation should improve after he elevates his extreme Tao to the 7th level. Just like when he reached the 4th level, he might gain control over other abilities. Countless years of cultivation in the starry sky had given him profound insights. Although constant slaughter happened on the primitive stars, he could find moments to catch his breath. Since encountering Huqing, he had either been fighting desperately or fleeing for his life. Now, he finally had some time to stabilize his strength. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes, conserving his energy, and began consolidating his various Taos. The battle with Mo Long and others not only yielded precious treasures and achievements but also the origin sources devoured. These origin sources, when combined, could rival a perfected 9 revolutions complete origin source Tao, and they were second-tier origin source Taos at that. His task now was to absorb these origin source powers into his extreme Tao as much as possible. As for the ultimate sword Tao origin source, he had already stepped into the 6th level. He didn't need to advance it further now, and even if he did, he dared not use the origin sources he had devoured to elevate it. The sword Tao was unique, it couldn't be complicated, and certainly not chaotic. Sword Tao needed purity, something innate. The extreme Tao, on the other hand, was different. It contained the origin sources of all great Taos, and he could freely devour and merge them. As for heart power, it couldn't be considered a separate Tao. It was intertwined with the sword Tao. The stronger his sword Tao, the stronger his heart power. Since his ultimate sword Tao reached the 6th level, his heart power had also changed and showed signs of breakthrough. This was largely due to the Bodhi heartwood he got from Wuliang Buddha. If he had the chance, he definitely wanted to see that Bodhi tree. If he could uproot it entirely, that would be even better. However, this thought flashed in his mind and disappeared. This tree had given birth to the Wuliang realm, an invaluable treasure even the Tongtian Buddha coveted. How could he possibly touch it? Focusing his mind, he began to merge the origin sources and also allocated a portion of his thought power to manifest an illusory phantom sword. He knew quite a lot about sword formations, especially the ancient sword formations. In the ancient era, a remarkable and extraordinary sword immortal had emerged in the Great Sea region. This sword immortal had successfully merged the sword Tao, achieving the status of an emperor. Moreover, he had created a peerless sword technique which had been passed down to this day. Among them, there was the 3-foot sword formation, but this formation was incomplete. The owner of the 3-foot sword hadn't completed the formation before being suppressed by Zhen Wuyang. The grand formation had 6 layers. The owner of the 3-foot sword had once claimed that the 3-foot sword could measure the universe, with a total of 13 layers. Unfortunately, just after creating the 6th layer, he was suppressed. However, these 6 layers were sufficient for Jian Wushuang. As for the 13 layers mentioned by the emperor, he didn't know if it was true or false. It was possible that the emperor never said such a thing. Perhaps someone had fabricated the rumor. After all, claiming to reach the 13th layer right after creating the 6th layer to measure the universe sounded too unbelievable. With a slight movement of his thought power, countless illusions of Jian Wushuang split off and began to deduce the sword formation together. The name of this grand formation was quite grandiose, but it ultimately fell into obscurity. Transcendent Immortal Formation, Jian Wushuang murmured. A formation that could kill immortals, how domineering. Unfortunately, it couldn't kill the emperor. Otherwise, Zhen Wuyang wouldn't have been a problem. The first 3 layers of the Transcendent Immortal Formation corresponded to the Grand Yen Immortal. When that sword immortal was at the level of the Grand Yen Immortal, he achieved great fame and strength through this formation. It's important to note that not every Grand Yen Immortal could become an emperor. That sword immortal was only a 3rd-grade sword cultivator back then. Even when he reached the 9 revolution stage, he was at most comparable to a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. But with this formation, he could achieve the status of a Tao Lord. In his hands, this grand formation was undoubtedly a terrifying formation that could kill extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals. Someone like Luo Hao, a 2nd-grade origin source cultivator at the perfected 9 revolutions level at his best, could only match the strength of a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. Even if he continued to improve, a 3rd-grade Grand Yen Immortal at best could only be on par with a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. The supremely talented Sword Immortal, who had mastered the 3rd-grade origin source Great Tao as the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, was no ordinary cultivator. He was comparable to peak-level Grand Yen Immortals and had even established his name as a Tao Lord. As he delved deeper into the sword formation, Jian Wushuang felt its immense power. The first layer of the Transcendent Immortal Formation, an entry-level stage, required mastery over 36 sword techniques. Each sword intent had to surpass the perfected 9 revolutions level. For Jian Wushuang, this was relatively straightforward, but mastering all 36 sword techniques posed a challenge. With the recent creation of his illusory sword technique, he could divide it into 9 swords. After this power boost, he could possibly split it into 18 swords. However, another division might weaken the inherent sword intent significantly. Fortunately, each of his sword intents far surpassed the perfected 9 revolutions level. At the 6th stage of the ultimate Tao, it was equivalent to the 9th stage of a 2nd-grade origin source Tao. His formidable sword intent likely wasn't much different from that supremely talented sword immortal during his peak period as a Grand Yen Immortal. Meeting the requirements was one thing. Comprehending the rest was relatively straightforward. He was not inventing a formation but merely mastering a sword formation. The complexity was significantly lower. Plus, with his mastery of the ultimate Tao and his role as the master of the sword, understanding the sword formation was as natural as a fish in water. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye within the cave. The silence of the original planet failed to capture the passage of time through blooming and withering flowers. It was Jian Wushuang's strengthened power that lent meaning to the passing time. Above the mountains, 2 top-grade 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals tore through the sky and stopped near Jian Wushuang. One had the peak fighting power of the best 9 revolutions expert, while the other was a Grand Yen Immortal with a frail divine body on the verge of collapse. Madman Yang, I've brought you here. This place is the deepest part of the mountains. You won't encounter powerful Grand Yen Immortals here. With your achievements after the trial, you can still maintain your position within the top 10,000. By then, you can comprehend the origin source of the Qixin Temple. The top-tier Grand Yen Immortal persuaded. The one being persuaded was Madman Yang, whose real name was Yang Feng. Due to his crazed fighting style, he earned the moniker Madman Yang. However, madness on the original planet was far from a virtue. Despite his strength being among the top of the 9 revolutions, his tendency to burn his origin source recklessly made him a headache for many experts. After entering the original planet, he formed a team with a group of friends and accumulated significant achievement points. However, advancing into the top 1,000 was exceedingly difficult with his strength. Thus, he started targeting solitary peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. Yet, every single one of those peak-level Grand Yen Immortals who could roam the main continent alone was a formidable opponent. Their entire squad was almost obliterated by one such peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. Fortunately, Madman Yang burned half of his origin source to escape the pursuit of the peak-level Grand Yen Immortal, saving them all. Losing half of his origin source and his divine body was on the verge of collapse. Madman Yang couldn't fight anymore. He could only retire in the mountains. Humph, if it weren't for your cowardice, I would have killed that bullshit Daluo Realms prince long ago. Madman Yang had almost died, but his mouth was still very tough, not convinced at all. The peak-level Grand Yen Immortal they had their eyes on was one of the top 10 princes of the Daluo realm. 3 years ago, 4 of the 6 great princes of the Daluo realm on this original planet had fallen. The remaining 2 princes did not dare to be arrogant anymore and had been walking in the main continent in a low-profile manner. Who would have thought that a few top-notch Grand Yen Immortals would dare to surround him and treat him as a pushover? In a fit of anger, they almost killed all the experts in that small team. His good friend sighed and said indifferently, "All right, even little 7 has fallen this time. What else do you want us to do?" Hearing him mention little 7, Madman Yang also fell silent, and his eyes turned red. Little 7 was the only female among them. In the outside world, he had always treated her as a younger sister. Now, she had fallen on the original planet because of them. Little 7. Madman Yang lowered his head. "All right, don't be too sad. Rest well here. In a few years, if you really can't fight anymore, we'll come to you and wait for the trial to end." Their strength was at the top grade level, and with this strength they had a chance of entering the top 1,000. Moreover, they had discussed that in the final year, if anyone was the closest to the top 1,000, they would give up the top 10,000 spot and give the identity token to that person so that he could enter the top 1,000 and enter the next round. As for the treasures bestowed, they were given to those who contributed to the battle. Madman Yang nodded. This time, he didn't say anything else and went straight into the mountain range. The expert who sent him here shook his head and sighed. His figure flashed and disappeared from where he was. The journey was not over yet. He still had to go to the main continent to fight. After landing in the heart of the mountain range, Madman Yang collected his aura and started to search for a suitable place to hide. Now that he was seriously injured and only had the strength of an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions, he naturally had to find the safest place to hide. He walked over thousands of mountains and searched everywhere. "I heard that there are more than 100,000 Grand Yen Immortals hidden in this mountain range." Madman Yang sneered. Grand Yen Immortals who needed to hide were the weakest. This was also the hinterland of the mountain range, so not many experts would come here. When some Grand Yen Immortals came in, they saw that the situation was not right and hid in the mountain range. These people were mostly 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals. They were weak and did not have any battle achievements, so no one went to look for these Grand Yen Immortals. Killing a 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal only gave him 100 battle achievement points. If he had the time, he might as well participate in a random battle on the continent and obtain 10,000 battle achievement points. After all these years of trial, the Grand Yen Immortals who were able to survive on the main continent were not weak. Moreover, each of them had hundreds of thousands of battle achievement points. These people were the real fat meat. Madman Yang continued to explore the mountain range. Even though his strength had dropped drastically, he was still at the standard of an ordinary perfected 9 revolutions. Naturally, he was not afraid of those cowards who were hiding. Thud! Madman Yang stepped into a quiet canyon. "This place is not bad," Madman Yang murmured softly. After fighting for so many years, he was still somewhat unwilling to end up like this. However, his strength had decreased so much that he could no longer stay on the main continent. Otherwise, he would be courting death. After entering the canyon, his figure flashed and he reached the depths of the canyon. Looking around, there were natural caves here that extended in all directions. It was very suitable for hiding. He took another step forward and entered the cave. Madman Yang, who had just entered the cave, suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, before he could react, he was stunned on the spot. Then, like a puppet, he walked forward mechanically. Whoosh! I see someone took the initiative to come and deliver their battle points to me. Jian Wushuang controlled the seriously injured Madman Yang with his heart power. In the blink of an eye, he had already cultivated for several years. He originally wanted to leave this place in the next few days and go to the main continent to roam around. In the end, before he could move, a silly grand yen immortal barged into his array. Then, under the interference of his thought power, he let Madman Yang walk into the cave he was in and directly used his heart power to control him. Although he was also ranked in the top 100 of the original planet, he did not know much about the actual battlefields on the original planet. With a thought, Madman Yang came directly in front of him. At this moment, Madman Yang was sitting cross-legged opposite Jian Wushuang with a dull look in his eyes. "Let me ask you, how much do you know about the main continent?" Jian Wushuang waved his hand and a long table appeared in front of him. On it were some rare fruits and a pot of wine. All of these were obtained from God Emperor Mo Long. This fellow had an emperor as his father and a territory comparable to a medium-grade world under his control. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was an emperor. As an emperor, it was normal for him to have all kinds of rare treasures, strange fruits, and fine wine. Jian Wushuang poured himself a glass of wine and drank it calmly. The light fragrance of the wine made him feel refreshed. After drinking it, he felt light and light. It seemed that the wine was refined from a large number of exotic fruits. It was good to be the master of a force. All kinds of treasures were offered, but Jian Wushuang had never even smelled this kind of wine. After all, this pot of wine could probably be exchanged for an ordinary treasure in the outside world. Jian Wushuang wasn't that extravagant. Although Madman Yang was unconscious, he still swallowed his saliva and replied stiffly, "Continent? Is it the Feather Continent?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. He had heard Mo Long mention the Feather Continent before. At that time, he had wanted to ask Mo Long about the situation in the Feather Continent. However, he remembered that Mo Long had just recovered from his injuries and had not gone to the Feather Continent for a long time. That was the main battlefield. It was different every day. "Oh right. Why is that continent called the Feather Continent?" Jian Wushuang asked curiously. When they had just arrived at the original planet, it had been deathly silent. They did not know anything about this planet. How did that continent have a name and everyone recognized it? That continent was derived from a feather. Tao Lord Shui, you called it Feather Continent, and everyone followed suit. A feather? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed and he exclaimed in shock. A feather? How could it be so big? A feather the size of a continent, and it was 10% the size of the entire original planet. Regardless of where the feather fell from, that existence had to be very large. This wasn't the manifestation of some magical heavenly law. This was truly the size of a feather that had fallen off. That existence's body was probably comparable to a miniature world. He had never heard of such a huge body. Even a Tier 5 emperor would find it difficult to do such a thing. How strong was this body? Although he had never seen the true form of a special life form with a body 10,000 times stronger than his, he had heard that when a special life form reached the perfected 9 revolution stage, its true form would cover the sky and the sun. The largest one was only a few 100,000 miles in size. An emperor like Qi Shui should be tens of millions of miles or even hundreds of millions of miles. However, the feather transformation continent was too huge. Even a perfected 9 revolutions would need 4 hours to cross the feather transformation continent. A single feather was already so big. The true body of that existence. He simply did not dare to imagine it. How powerful must the divine body be to have such a large body? Or rather, that existence was an expert that surpassed the emperor. Jian Wushuang waited for Madman Yang's answer with some anticipation, but the result was not satisfactory. Don't know. Madman Yang replied emotionlessly. It was not too strange. For people like them, if they wanted to understand the origin of the feather, they had to enter the core of the Qishan temple through their strength. Only then would they be qualified to know who the owner of the feather was and how powerful he was. However, it was too difficult to enter the core. In the end, only the first few people would be able to enter the Qishan temple. The more he thought about it, the further away Jian Wushuang shook his head and waved his hand. Forget it. Let's talk about the current situation in the Feather Continent. This time, Madman Yang's answer was very fast. Obviously, These things were deeply imprinted in his mind. Jian Wushuang listened attentively. He never expected that so many strange things would happen in the small feather continent. Especially when he heard that 4 of the 6 princes of the Daluo realm had died in a day. There were also 2 unfamiliar names that suddenly appeared in the top 100. These 2 people seemed to have appeared out of thin air and suddenly appeared in the top 100. Most importantly, they could not find these 2 people on the feather continent. They all felt that there was a problem with the Qixin temple. They all shouted at the Qixin temple on the only holy mountain on the feather continent to explain. They had been fighting desperately, but in the end, 2 strangers suddenly appeared in the top 100, and they could not find these 2 people. There were only a few 100,000 experts in the feather continent. In such a small place, they would see each other all day long. They were all very familiar with each other. They all felt that this matter was very ridiculous. There were even rumors that a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal had entered the original planet and was lucky enough to encounter the collective suicide of the 4 princes of the Daluo realm. Only by picking up these identity tokens of the top 1,000 experts could he enter the top 100. There were actually people who believed such a ridiculous rumor. Those who believed it were mostly top-grade 9 revolutions. Under the circumstances of survival of the fittest, it was very difficult for them to enter the top 1,000. They all had the mentality of giving it a try and entered the mountain range to find that mysterious 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. In the end, after a year, they did not find anything and returned empty-handed. After all, time was precious. Tell me about the distribution of experts on the feather continent. The more Jian Wushuang listened, the more ridiculous he thought things had become. He didn't want gossip, but information about experts. It seemed that Madman Yang was daydreaming. Jian Wushuang was speechless. However, he did not know how crazy those experts were. They tried their very best, even risking their lives to get into the Topo 1000. However, they did not have the strength to enter the top 1000 and could only daydream and talk about it every day. Powerhouses. Madman Yang's expression changed, and he told the truth about the experts of the entire feather continent. There were 5 invincible experts in the feather continent. Each of them could be conferred the title of Dao Lord in the outside world. The feather continent was divided into 5 regions due to these 5 individuals. While other powerful beings could freely traverse, these 5 invincible experts were bound by a rule they themselves established. They were restricted to hunting within their respective regions and were not allowed to venture into others. In the central hunting grounds of Yuhua, it was the domain of Blood Moon Dao Lord. In the northern region, the second-ranked Pio Jun held sway. In the southern region, the third-ranked Dao Lord Leng Shuang ruled. In the eastern region, the fourth-ranked Dao Lord Si Tian presided. In the western region, the fifth-ranked Dao Lord Wanxing held authority. Their rankings were closely contested, often changing, but their positions remained unchallenged. The fame they had in the early days was forged through significant battles. Outside, their true strengths were mostly unknown, but in the original planet they became figures of great interest. Their rankings were connected to their abilities. Dao Lord Shuiyu held the first position due to his unique special life form characteristics. His innate secret technique was a blood moon, doubling his speed. No prey he targeted could escape him, making him unassailable in his top spot. The lowest ranked among them, Dao Lord Wanxing, was the prince of the Xingluo realm, exceptionally gifted and the chief prince of his realm. The Xingluo, Daluo, and Tianluo realms were actually one force. This was also the reason why the princes of the Daluo realm were so confident. Unfortunately, Dao Lord Wanxing was not interested in them at all. However, those Daluo realm princes were relentless, causing havoc in the western region. Among the 3 higher worlds, Tianluo realm was the highest and was named Daluo Heaven. This faction was highly united externally. Even when entering the Qixin temple, the emperor had instructed them not to harm each other. Myriad Stars Dao Lord had lofty ambitions and couldn't care less about the Daluo princes. He pursued the ultimate. Initially, he couldn't progress further due to his strength. But now, thanks to the Qixin temple, he could comprehend the origin source of the Qixin, boosting his strength again. There was hope he could reach the level of a half-step emperor. With the strength of a half-step emperor, his chances of merging the Tao would increase. More importantly, he could gain the experience of merging the Tao from the Qixin Temple or some secret Tao merging technique. During the age of ancient anticipation, dozens of emperors suddenly emerged, which was evidence. The Qixin Temple likely held something significant to aid in merging the Tao. These talented Tao lords, each with grand ambitions, aimed beyond just being Tier 3 emperors. Their goal was Tier 4, even Tier 5. Without this kind of ambition, it was better to choose a fourth-grade origin and merge the Tao. Even if they became emperors, they would be the weakest among them. Apart from these Tao lords, the Feather Continent also harbored individual powerful individuals. Each of them could evade the Tao lords and had no fear of their threats, freely slaughtering other Grand Yen Immortals. Each of these experts was ranked in the top 20. On the Feather Continent, if the first tier of experts were Tao lords, then the second tier consisted of the remaining 15 extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals who managed to rank in the top 20. Each of them had touched the threshold of becoming a Tao Lord. Their strength was only a step away. While these Tao Lords remained aloof, not leaving their designated regions, these extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals, on the brink of becoming Tao Lords, were not bound by such restrictions. They could freely slaughter in any region. So Madman Yang feared these individuals the most. Once they sensed that terrifying aura, they would either flee desperately or conceal their presence as much as possible. The third-tier Grand Yen Immortals were equally fearsome. They were all extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals who operated independently. Fortunately, there weren't many of these powerful beings, just a few dozen or so. Generally speaking, in the Feather Continent, the true hunters were the extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals of the upper echelons. Each one of them ranked in the top 100, possessing unimaginable strength. Over the many years of warfare, only a few extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals had fallen, and they were unfortunate enough to encounter Tao Lord Xueyu. Several extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals had died at the hands of Xueyu, including one who had touched the threshold of Tao Lord and had directly challenged Xueyu. In the end, he was slain in the central region at the Falling Moon Divine Mountain. This incident marked the most powerful Grand Yen Immortal to have fallen on this original planet until now. With this achievement, Tao Lord Xueyu ascended to rank 1 and maintained it since then. On the Universe Deity Demon list, nearly all the top 1,000 were Tao Lords, and the top 200 were mostly half-step emperors. His rankings were consistently high. However, on this original planet, the highest rank on the Universe Deity Demon list didn't belong to him. It belonged to a remarkably low-key figure, Taoist Wan Xing, an unparalleled expert who cultivated the path of myriad origin source Taos. He was ranked at 208, second only to the half-step emperors in existence. Despite his terrifying strength, he remained extremely low-key on this original planet. His rank was the lowest among the 5 Tao Lords, a fact that Jian Wushuang remembered well. All the information about these individuals was precious, especially since they practiced such profound arts, which made it convenient for him to escape. Tao Lord Wanxing, stronger even than Jiuyu, outpaced Blood Moon Taoist, who was the top speedster on the original planet. The danger posed by these two individuals was exaggerated, to say the least. One found himself trapped with no escape, while the other lacked the courage to face the confrontation. In the entire universe, ranked among the top 200 super-strong beings, there was only a step separating them from the half-step emperor, the Grand Yen Immortal who unified myriad Taos. Aside from these individuals, Jian Wushuang also meticulously recorded information about those peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. Although the threat from ordinary peak-level Grand Yen Immortals was minimal, he deemed it necessary to keep a record. Because on the Feather Continent, the most significant enemies were precisely these peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. Some of these peak-level Grand Yen Immortals preferred a solitary and secluded existence, while others shamelessly formed groups, specifically targeting teams composed of common 9 revolutions cultivators, numbering 3 to 5 people. On the Feather Continent, below the level of peak-level Grand Yen Immortals, there were hardly any individuals traveling alone. Most of them gathered in groups of 10 or more strong cultivators. Madman Yang and his team had been adventuring in the western region because there were fewer peak-level Grand Yen Immortals there. The quality of their team was high. Each member was a top-tier Grand Yen Immortal. Comprising 9 individuals, they fought far and wide, gaining considerable renown. However, precisely because of this, they dared to provoke a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal, ultimately depleting half of their origin source in the battle. So, how many achievement points have you gained in total? Jian Wushuang said slowly, his eyes revealing a hint of murderous intent. Madman Yang's achievement points now determined his fate. If the number was high, he would be killed. If it was low, he might be spared. A lunatic who had depleted half of his origin source energy. Jian Wushuang couldn't absorb much from him. Considering the valuable information he had provided, sparing his life was not out of the question. 97,000, Madman Yang said, his voice stiff. So little. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. He had battled in the main continent for many years. With such a meager record, even preserving the last 10,000 spots after the trial would be challenging. But considering he fought alongside 8 others, he understood. His expression softened as he mused. But I guess you got lucky. If you had surpassed 1,000,000, one wouldn't have spared you. Setting a clear limit in his mind, he decided he would kill anyone who reached over 1,000,000 points, but spare those just below, even if the difference was as small as 30,000. That was Jian Wushuang's current state of mind. All right, think of anything else interesting, Jian Wushuang said, enjoying himself from above, reveling in food and drink. He hadn't relaxed like this in a long time. Ever since he entered the great desolate wilderness, his life had been a constant struggle. Either he was working hard, escaping, breaking through, practicing, feeling lost, or engaging in deadly battles. Now, every sip and every bite greatly improved his mental state, boosting his confidence in reaching the 5th level of heart power. On the feathered continent, there are many alliances formed by weaker individuals. They're elites from some major forces, banding together. Several Dao lords have tacitly agreed not to attack them. Such a bizarre situation, Jian Wushuang sneered. He had a premonition that these people would be slaughtered like pigs in the coming years. What was the Qixin Temple? It was the greatest opportunity in the entire original universe. Even emperors went crazy for it, let alone these Grand Yen Immortals. Which Dao Lord wouldn't want to successfully merge their Dao and become rank 1? Even if they offended major powers, what did it matter? If they succeeded in merging their Dao and achieved the Tier 4 Emperor status, who would be afraid of those major powers? Everyone beneath an emperor was insignificant. No one would risk offending a Tier 4 Emperor for their sake. Did these people foolishly believe they could do as they pleased? When the time came and the Dao Lords intervened and killed those like pigs, dealing with them all at once would be much quicker than chasing down each peak-level Grand Yen Immortal one by one. The Qixin Temple had been open for 6 years now. From millions of Grand Yen Immortals, only a few remained. If everyone was as timid as these people, how many would survive? According to Madman Yang's words, there were still 300,000 Grand Yen Immortal powerhouses in the Feather Continent. Along with the 100,000 or so hidden in the mountains, in just 6 years, at least 2 million Grand Yen Immortals had died on the original planet. His record of over 40 million battle points only ranked him 72nd. Those in the top 10 must have had billions of points. How many Grand Yen Immortals did they have to kill? Even if they managed to kill a few perfected 9 revolutions, it wouldn't inflate their points 3 to this extent. And this ranking was from 3 years ago. He must have long fallen out of the top 100 by now. 2 million was an underestimate. When he obtained the identity token, he glanced at it briefly. There were 3 million Grand Yen Immortals on the original planet. Now, he roughly estimated that there were fewer than 500,000 left. Over 2.5 million Grand Yen Immortals had died. Calculating the ratio of perfected 9 revolutions converted to points, that was in the hundreds of billions. Especially in the first 3 years, the madness was extraordinary. At that time, when Hu Qing killed Luo Hao barely made it into the top 1,000 with just 1,000,000 battle points. But now, even with 1,000,000 points, you couldn't make it into the top 2,000. When the last few years of madness truly arrived, even the top 10,000 couldn't be held. According to his current calculations, entering the top 1,000 required 5 million battle records, entering the top 100 needed 50 million or more, the top 10 required 500 million, and the top 5 needed over a billion. However, the crazier, the better. The higher the tier of Grand Yen Immortals he killed, the more his points multiplied. As long as he killed 10 peak-level Grand Yen Immortals, he could firmly sit in first place. 5 billion battle record points, even if he couldn't kill Dao Lord Shuiyu, it wouldn't matter. The first layer of the transcendent immortal formation was perfected, tripling the power of the sword formation. Originally, with 9 phantom illusory swords, he could threaten a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. With Hu Qing's restraint, he managed to kill Mi Luo. Now, his power had tripled. Facing a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal alone should not pose much difficulty. However, he set a deadline for himself, 20 years. He had to return to the mountain range after 20 years of conquest. 20 years later, with only 3 to 4 years left until the trial ended, the various Dao Lords would definitely settle scores with them. The ranking on this original planet alone didn't prove anything. They had to strive for a higher overall ranking. Of course, this was just Jian Wushuang's speculation. Whether there were any hidden rules inside the Qixin Temple, no one knew. But everyone wanted to perform well in front of the Qixin Temple. Jian Wushuang put away the scrolls in front of him, stood up slowly, and activated the treasure that suppressed his aura. He became virtually undetectable, with no trace of his presence discernible to the naked eye. "You're lucky this time. I'll spare your life," he said. Madman Yang seemed to understand something. A glimmer of light flashed in his dazed eyes. "Oh, right, when you enter the Feather Continent, you must join an organization. It's highly beneficial." Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. Join an organization? He hadn't thought about that. With his strength in the Feather Continent, he had reached a point where he didn't need to team up with anyone. He didn't need to ally with anyone and be restricted by others. "Why?" Jian Wushuang asked lightly. 3 years ago, in the western part of the Feather Continent, a monk suddenly appeared. His strength was incredibly formidable. He single-handedly wiped out several top-tier squads. However, he didn't kill anyone. He just took their identity tokens without even seizing their treasures. Madman Yang spoke with a quivering voice. "This monk leader is known as the Monster Monk. His power rivals the extreme level and he keeps getting stronger. He has reached the level of Dao Lord, and even the peak Grand Yen Immortals in the Feather Continent are banding together. The Monster Monk is terrifying. He rampages through the domain of the 5 Dao Lords, sweeping through with the efficiency of a Dao Lord and the strength to match." Madman Yang's voice trembled as he spoke. Their squad had once watched from afar as the Monster Monk swept through peak-level Grand Yen Immortals. With a long staff, he caused the heavens and earth to change color, defeating several extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals effortlessly. Monster Monk! Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows and quickly took out his identity token to check. Participant. Hu Qing rank. 16. Jian Wushuang inhaled sharply, hardly believing what he saw. When he and Hu Qing had parted ways, Hu Qing's strength was comparable to a Grand Yen Immortal touching the threshold of the extreme level. How did he become a Dao Lord so quickly? Hadn't he just broken through the 9 revolutions? Even if he was a Grand Yen Immortal with the ultimate Dao, at most, he would reach the strength of an extreme-level Grand Yen Immortal. Could it be that he had achieved the perfected 9 revolutions level? Jian Wushuang bit his lip. He knew Hu Qing harbored a great secret, but he hadn't expected him to be this powerful. He had become so formidable right after Jian Wushuang left. In just 3 years, he had made it into the top 20. Hu Qing's goal was probably to reach the top 10, maybe even seize victory from the Dao Lords. However, if he had truly achieved perfected 9 revolutions, it would be difficult for him to strive for first place. If he remained at the level of a 9 revolutions, his chances were significant. After all, he could obtain double the achievement points just by fighting above his cultivation level. Where is he now? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but ask. Although they were peers in cultivation, Hu Qing's sudden breakthrough was different from Jian Wushuang's steady progress toward the peak. Even though Hu Qing had practiced for 30 million years, he had not reached the Grand Yen Immortal level before entering the Great Desolate Wilderness. In the end, during his battle against Xiang Bingyun, he had erupted, stepping directly into the Tao, directly challenging the perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. At that time, his path was still uncertain. Now, it seems he has completely mastered the ultimate Tao, which explains his extraordinary power. Jian Wushuang was different. He had endured trials in life and death for over 20,000 years, progressing from weakness to strength. He walked the path of gods, annihilated god dynasties, received assistance from Xianxia, and eventually entered the Great Sea region, receiving many gifts from emperors. He barely managed to become an extreme-level Grand Yen Immortal. This was the result of his efforts over 2 millennia. After entering the vast Great Desolate Wilderness, he awakened his heart power, practiced in the starry sky for millions of years, mastered the extreme Tao, and truly took off after that. He constantly broke through, and within a decade, he possessed the strength of a peak-level Grand Yen Immortal. But all of this was built on the foundation of over 20,000 years, combined with the special place he practiced in the starry sky for millions of years. Now, Hu Qing, with just a step or two, had surpassed him significantly, making it difficult for him to accept. Could it be that Hu Qing had also entered the starry sky at some moment and practiced for millions of years? The likelihood of this was very low. If Hu Qing had entered the starry sky, he would have at least mastered the extreme Tao. Yet, Jian Wushuang did not sense any similar aura from Hu Qing. Apart from these possibilities, only one remained. Hu Qing was the chosen child of the Qishan Temple. Qishan Temple was secretly nurturing Hu Qing. The thought left Jian Wushuang even more puzzled. In all fairness, his talent was not bad. Why didn't Qishan Temple nurture him? Or was it that his ability to awaken heart power and master the extreme Tao was all because of Qishan Temple? Jian Wushuang fell into contemplation. Unbeknownst to him, the true spirit of the Qishan Temple had already pronounced his fate, deeming his future short-lived and not worth investing in. Indeed, the temple held greater hope for Hu Qing. Among all the Grand Yen Immortals, Hu Qing's talent ranked among the top 10, making him a key candidate for the temple's nurturing. Jian Wushuang and others were merely stepping stones for these chosen successors. Hu Qing was averse to bloodshed, but the others were not. For the sake of these successors, it seemed likely that 90% of the Grand Yen Immortals in the entire universe would have to be sacrificed. Grand Yen Immortals were not emperors. With each era passing, new Grand Yen Immortals would rise like mushrooms after rain. Emperors might require more time, but for the Qishan Temple, these matters were inconsequential. Having comprehended the temple's intentions, Jian Wushuang involuntarily emitted an aura of malevolence. The true spirit, despite his formidable strength, was still just a true spirit. They viewed the inhabitants of the original universe as creatures to be cultivated, and Jian Wushuang could take this opportunity to transform himself. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. If Jian Wushuang were to perish in the end, the true spirit would cheer in victory. Even if he managed to survive without perishing, they could still absorb him into their peripheral forces. No matter how one looked at it, the true spirit had everything to gain. However, it all depended on whether Jian Wushuang agreed or not. In the next moment, Jian Wushuang's form reversed, and the malevolent aura transformed into black lightning that surrounded him. It occasionally collided, producing crackling sounds. This aura filled Madman Yang with fear, forcing him to retreat involuntarily. Jian Wushuang pierced through the rocks, his gaze penetrating the entire original planet. With a swift movement, he disappeared into the depths of the mountain cave. At that moment, Madman Yang, left behind in the same spot, regained his senses. Huff huff! Madman Yang panted heavily. After his eyes returned to normal, a string of memories appeared in his mind and instantly churned in his mind. The memory fragments made his back break out in cold sweat. I actually encountered such a powerful existence and survived. He couldn't believe it. Madman Yang, whose body was a little weak, tried to sense his surroundings. When he found that the existence had left, he let out a sigh of relief. Then, He immediately rushed out of the mountain range and changed directions. After changing 7 or 8 places, he landed on a quiet mountain. Although Jian Wushuang had said that he had let him go, he was still afraid that Jian Wushuang would suddenly go back on his word. He had survived with great difficulty, and he did not want to die without knowing why. That existence could be a super expert who could be controlled. He did not even need to do anything to kill him. He could just order him to destroy his own origin source. He had encountered such a legendary being today. He was lucky to be able to survive. After entering a cave, he took a long time to recover. Then, he remembered that this existence had gone to the Feather Continent and hurriedly informed his sworn brothers in the Feather Continent. Big brother, be careful of this person. Jian Wushuang didn't travel very fast after he set off from the mountain range. It took him half a day to leave the mountain range. Along the way, he did not encounter a single living person. He did not know if it was his bad luck or the others who were too lucky. Although the mountain range was not as crazy as the Feather Continent, there were still many battles. Especially at the periphery of the mountain range, a checkpoint had been set up. Fellow Taoist, are you heading to the Feather Continent? Above a dry riverbed outside the mountain range stood a scholar-like Grand Yen Immortal. His aura was gentle and his speech was extraordinary. If they were in the outside world, Jian Wushuang really wanted to sit down and have a good discussion with him. However, this was the original planet. After more than 6 years of killing, none of the survivors were easy to talk to. Even a person like Hu Qing was conferred the title of Monster Monk, let alone this pale-faced scholar in front of him. Other people might not be able to see through it, but Jian Wushuang could sense the strong resentment and murderous aura from his body with his thought power. The two auras were suppressed by the pale-faced scholar. If it was anyone else, even top-grade level Grand Evolution Immortals would be difficult to see through the hidden aura in his body. Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry to meet such a person as soon as he left the mountain range. He wanted to see what tricks the other party was playing. That's right. Jian Wushuang cupped his fists. The aura he emitted gave people the feeling that he was at most a top-grade 9 revolutions. This strength was considered basic combat strength in the Feather Continent. That's great. I am Reincarnation, and I have just left the mountain range. I want to go to the Feather Continent. Fellow Taoist, you must travel together. You can also travel together on the road. I heard that many experts could not survive in the Feather Continent, so they formed teams outside the mountain range to block the cultivators who were heading to the Feather Continent. Reincarnation's words were perfect. He made it clear that it was his first time leaving the mountain range and he was not as ruthless as the Grand Yen Immortals on the Feather Continent. He also threatened Jian Wushuang that it was best to be in a group if there were people blocking him on the way. Otherwise, he would not die much if he went to the Feather Continent alone. This move was good enough to trick a novice monk like Hu Qing, but it was a child's play to trick Jian Wushuang. Did he really think that he was a fledgling and still wet behind the ears? They were all Grand Yen Immortals. How could there be so many idiots? However, when he thought of the 2 Grand Yen Immortals in the Great Dream Realm, Jian Wushuang was not so sure. The original universe was so big, so there might really be many fools. Oh, I see. Jian Wushuang looked surprised and timid. It gave Reincarnation a misconception. Moreover, Jian Wushuang had a good grasp of his aura. He wanted to hide it but leaked it out. He would be able to discern the aura of a top-tier Grand Evolution Immortal, let alone a peak-level Grand Evolution Immortal. Following that, the two of them began to discuss the Feather Continent. Reincarnation was overjoyed. He secretly thought that he had caught a fish and started to ask about Jian Wushuang's name. Brother Ren, I won't hide the truth. My ranking has just entered the top 100,000. I came to the Feathered Continent this time to take a chance, seize an opportunity. After all, such opportunities are rare. Jian Wushuang confessed truthfully. He wasn't lying. This trip to the Feathered Continent was indeed about taking a chance, hoping for a stroke of luck. It was also a chance to overshadow those Tao Lords a bit. His ranking in the top 100,000 was also accurate. He was currently ranked around 100, truly within the top 100,000. But Reincarnation's name was a mystery. Jian Wushuang scoured the rankings and finally found him. His record was a meager rank 10,000, placing him at the bottom. This surprised Jian Wushuang. Were these people now looking for individuals with clean backgrounds? Or perhaps Reningzhou was a fraud? From their conversation, Jian Wushuang learned that Reningzhou had already recruited a few like-minded Grand Yen Immortals. He was still looking for a few more, scattered around, recruiting Grand Yen Immortals emerging from the mountains. As he explained, the mountains had been sealed off by an extremely powerful force on the Feather Continent a month ago. Going out was possible, but without strength, getting in was impossible. Those weak enough to venture out usually ended up dead. Survival was nearly impossible. Those wanting to get in were mostly injured or desperate. The top 10,000 had no hope. Staying in the Feather Continent was just benefiting others. Leaving sooner was a better choice. However, there were far more trying to get in than those leaving. It seemed the power dynamics on the Feather Continent had undergone significant changes. After all, there were only 10,000 slots. Apart from the top 1,000 peak-level experts, there were 9,000 slots left. After years of screening, those who had persevered were, at the very least, perfected 9 revolutions. These Grand Yen Immortals gathered together, forming battle formations of thousands. Even extreme-level Grand Yen Immortals found them troublesome to deal with. While they had the strength to protect themselves, eliminating others was challenging. After all, it was a battle formation. Once they mobilized, pursuing and killing other Grand Yen Immortals became nearly impossible. Among these individuals was a prominent figure who devised a brilliant plan. No battle formation could exceed 1,000 people. By forming hundreds of battle formations and engaging in chaotic battles, in the end, the last remaining 1,000 people could enter the top 10,000. This person was none other than the priest Shuiwei, who had entered the top 1,000 with the strength of a 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Now, his ranking wasn't low either. If his battle formation could endure until the end, he might indeed enter the top 1,000. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but admire priest Shuiwei. He thought what a waste it would be if this man didn't rear goo worms. I never expected Brother Ren to be so knowledgeable about the various wonders of the Feather Continent. I am truly enlightened. Jian Wushuang truly hadn't heard of this before. When he asked Madman Yang, his inquiries mainly concerned top-tier experts. He had never cared about ordinary perfected 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals.